Hello and welcome to 6 Part. Today I'm gonna start a new series, What If Deku Was a Quirkless Boxer? Part 1. If you enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Ua is 6 months away. A 15-year-old boy was observed jogging through Musudafu's streets. The jacket was fastened around his waist, and he was dressed in a gray tracksuit. He was wearing the green boxing gloves that were fastened to the jacket. The young man was Izuku Midoriya, a rising featherweight star in Japan. He had just completed 4 kilometers of running as part of his endurance training for his upcoming match. Wiping the perspiration from his brow, he slowed to a stop beside a water fountain and drank some water. Before jogging down to the Hansuke boxing gym, his local gym, he gave his face one last spray of water. Izuku visited a gym that was frequently featured in boxing films. There was a ring in the middle for practice or sparring between customers, and the walls were lined with punching bags and boxing gear. He went inside and greeted some of the building's regulars before spotting a man named Kato Hansuke. He used to be the middleweight division champion and was a rather tall man. He wore spectacles, had short blonde hair, tanned skin, and a scar across the bridge of his nose. It had been about 10 years since his last bout before he retired as Japan's middleweight champion, but he wasn't as muscular as he once was. He said, "You done with your run, kid?" "Yup. If you need me, I'll be practicing punches," Izuku replied. He approached a punching bag, where Kato was standing holding a stopwatch and a clipboard. After his boxing career ended, he activated his quirk, which would cause him to become nearsighted but would also give him much faster vision and processing. As Izuku started to scream on the bag, Kato said, "Ready. Go." Anyone else who went to the gym would see a blur attacking the bag, but Kato counted every single punch. After Izuku punched for 2 minutes in a row, he said, "Stop. You're getting faster, but make sure that you maintain the same amount of strength." "Not bad, kid. I'll set up a match with the next fighter soon," Izuku exclaimed. "Can't wait," as he picked up 2 dumbbells, each weighing roughly 40 pounds, from a rack. His trainer followed him as he straightened up and curled them in place. After 100 or so repetitions, Kato put down his weights and took a moment to reflect. "So, how's the home life doing for you so far?" he asked, counting his reps. Following his brief respite, he headed to a pull-up bar and used it while answering. "It's been pretty weird living on my own since Mom got sick, but at least the fight money pays for her treatment," Izuku replied. "Other than that, it's been relatively the same." Good. Any school you're planning on going to?" To Kato's surprise, Izuku stated, "I'm actually considering trying to get into UA's hero course." "Ua, how are you going to balance your boxing career with trying to become a hero?" Kato responded. "I know it'll be hard, but I know I can pull it off," Izuku replied. Izuku said, "Leaping down from the bar, the additional training will help me in both fields." He drank from a water bottle, and as soon as he set the bottle down, he started doing leg work. Kato grabbed a pair of mitts from a box next to the ring and said, "I'm sure you'll figure it out, even though it's surprising that you're going to try for 2 careers at once. Now, step in the ring. I want to give you a little practice session to make sure you're good to go for the next fight." "Let's do it," Izuku exclaimed. As he put on boxing mitts, his coach came a second after him as he climbed the ropes to enter the gym's boxing ring. He said, "You know the drill, right?" "Yep," said the boxer. Izuku punched it with his left hand while Kato held up the mitt with his right. Kato said, "Good." Izuku punched the right with a left cross after he held up the right. Izuku punched one after the other after Kato held both up, abruptly swerving as the mitt swung toward his head. Perfect. Again. For the next 10 minutes, Izuku and Kato would perform the same moves, moving and ducking under Kato's movements as though they were in a real boxing match, and punching each mitt with the opposing fist. Depending on the distance, the boxer would use a different punch type for each lifted mitt. He would toss a hook if it was a bit too far to one side. A quick cross or jab would be effective if it were too close. He would solve the problem by delivering a quick upward blow or an uppercut if the mitt was pointing toward the ground. They were done, and Izuku drank from a water bottle while removing his gloves and setting them on the side of a bench. While the boy returned to the bag, another gym member held the stopwatch, allowing the boy to repeat his exercise sequence for a second set while his mentor withdrew to his office to manage the gym's finances. He heard the door open a moment later and saw a girl about his own age walk in. One long bang framed the right side of her face, and she wore her hair in a black ponytail. Intrigue was now evident in the gray cat-like eyes that scanned the arena before locating the young boxer. Now that he could see a clipboard under her arm, she approached him. I was sent by my parents to look for one Kato Hansake to present an offer of a sponsorship for one Izuku Midoriya. Do you perhaps know where I could find either of them? She inquired. Izuku, who isn't used to speaking to people his own age, said, That's me. The girl blinked in surprise in response. She remarked, well, that makes my job easier. She held out her hand and said, Momo Yairozu, it's a pleasure to meet you. Izuku blushed a little and shook the hand. He unwrapped his hands and replied, It's nice to meet you as well. What was this about a sponsorship? His eyes widened in surprise as she said, Oh, my parents like watching the youngest professional boxer in Japan fight. They wanted to sponsor you by doubling the pay you earn from each match. He said, I am grateful, but I would rather if the money went directly towards my mother's treatment. That's a lot of zeros. Momo inquired, Oh, is she doing alright? What happened? A villain's quirk hit her a year ago, and forced a dangerous illness onto her. I'm using the fight money I don't use for rent to pay for her to be treated, he stated. I hope she makes a return to good health. Also, I can talk to my family about that instead of the original terms of the sponsorship if that is what you desire. She replied. She scowled as she looked at her watch. Oh dear, it seems I must take my leave. Can I have your contact information before I go, to inform you of their decision? She inquired. Sure. He exclaimed, blushing and reaching for his phone. Before Momo left, the two swiftly exchanged phone numbers, with Izuku staying by the bag to take in the situation. I recently received a pretty girl's number. Before getting to his feet, he let out a cry inside his head and shook it to get his thoughts straight. Then he saw a poster of Japan's current featherweight champion. Before he went into the showers to rid his body of the sweat odor, he thought, one day, I'll beat you. Izuku returned to the main gym area to a smiling trainer after taking some time to reflect on everything that had transpired that day. Found a lady for yourself, kid? Kato asked, causing Izuku to blush and jump when he realized his mentor had witnessed his entire conversation with the girl. He scratched the back of his head and said, No, she just presented an offer for more funding to my mother's hospital bill, is all. Sewer. You tell yourself that. Anyways, I have the next fight set up for you. It'll be next week at the Musutafu Arena. Be ready and keep up your training, he concluded. Izuku beamingly said, You got it, I'll be ready to fight, as he walked out of the shower. Izuku was fired up with anticipation and resolve after hearing about the upcoming fight. When he eventually made it home, he was so excited that he chose to train alone until fatigue and the need to sleep took over his body. Izuku was being driven by his mentor to the Musutafu Arena, where he would face his next opponent, following roughly a week of training with Kato and at home. The man's name was apparently Tatsuya Takeshi, and he had a quirk called Dragon Scales, that made him a formidable boxer despite only being a featherweight by enabling him to grow stone-like scales on his body. After a few minutes, the two reached the arena and went into the locker room so that Izuku could get ready for his match. Izuku changed into a gray tank top and black boxing shorts, and he said, You ready for this? I sprung the fight on ya out of nowhere. I've been training harder ever since you called last week, so I'm ready for this, Izuku declared as he wrapped his hands in white boxing tape and tied his shoes. As Kato assisted him in donning a pair of light gray gloves, he draped an emerald robe bearing his name on the back over his attire. As the coach put it, Remember what I taught you, kid. Before someone from the arena showed up to remind them that the match was about to begin, he took out a pair of boxing mitts and performed a simple warm-up. He laughed when Izuku said, Never underestimate an opponent, and make sure to be kind and humble both in and out of the ring. Izuku was called into the ring, and the two departed after saying, Exactly. Now, go get him. His opponent was already standing in the ring when he left his side. At 5'9", Tatsuya Takeshi had short black hair and a scar on his left cheek. Scales were growing from beneath the man's red gloves to his elbows, and the trunks he wore were patterned after fire. Then, as he was introduced to the audience, the boy was the center of attention. As the audience applauded, the green-haired boxer removed his robe and grinned at his opponent, who grinned back. Coming in as the opponent, standing at 166 centimeters, and weighing in at 52 kilograms, Quirk unknown. Give it up for the blue corner, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku approached Kato, who was prepared with a bucket, a towel, a water bottle, and the mouth guard he was now inserting to shield the boy's teeth. Tatsuya was now waiting in the middle of the ring, and the challenger walked there. The two then assumed their respective stances. In order to signal the beginning of the match, the referee stood next to the two and watched as Izuku extended a glove and the opponent tapped it in respect. Fight. Izuku instantly veered to the left as a right cross came hurtling at his face, then retreated to dodge a swift left volley. After ducking under a left hook, Izuku swiftly landed a right uppercut to the chin and a left hook of his own to the jaw, pushing the man back a little. However, his scales vanished as quickly as they had appeared to shield him from the attack, so he didn't sustain much damage. After that, the opponent punched Izuku, who veered to the right, but the man's feint caught him with a left hook to the jaw. He ducked under another left to strike the gut after blocking the subsequent right cross. The green-haired boy blocked 2 of his jabs, and when he attempted to close in on him, he was struck hard in the face once more. He shook his head, backed up once more, and avoided 2 more blows. His hits have a truck-like feel. He ducked a few more punches and thought, I have to stop taking so many of them or else. Before the punch could land, Izuku quickly delivered another uppercut to the chin, countering Tatsuya's powerful right hook that was aimed at Izuku's cheek. Tatsuya was left stunned this time, and Izuku tried to punch him again to keep up the pressure before retreating. He now grinned as he saw that the area he had punched was reinforced with scales that spread across his skin, completely armoring him. Searching for a gap in the armored body to strike, Izuku sidestepped 3 jabs and a hook. An announcer declared, and it looks like Tatsuya activated his quirk. This will be a tough one to break through. The scales are hard as stone. Izuku continued to dodge in order to prevent taking any needless damage. He spotted a chance to poke his nose, but the opponent didn't recoil or even realize he had been struck. When Tatsuya heard the bell, he stopped himself in the middle of releasing another hard right cross. The referee declared, round 1 is over, and the 2 went back to their corners. Izuku spat a little blood into the bucket and said, I can't dent him in that state. Kato pointed to the floor and said, I know, kid. But you might have done more than you thought. Look. Izuku saw his opponent miss a few scales where he landed his jab, and he looked to see some being swept away. Even though the first round had just ended, he could already see the man was panting and a few were falling out of his gloves. With his analytical mind already formulating a winning plan, Izuku exclaimed, stone hard, but extremely loose scales that take up a ton of stamina to activate and maintain. I think I can take the match from here, Kato-sensei. Both fighters were prepared in the middle of the ring as the next round began. Izuku knew that someone would be on the mat at the end of the round because Tatsuya gave the boy the look that he was going to finish him off that round. He simply knew it wouldn't be him. Ready. Fight. Izuku rushed behind him to deliver a liver shot after retaliating with a body shot. The scales clearly blocked the hits, but a few seconds after the gloves hit, they fell off. When Tatsuya realized what was happening, he used a right hook to block Izuku's incoming uppercut that was headed for his bare chin. Izuku stumbled and took a hard blow to the face as he watched his opponent land another strong blow. I have to avoid this or I'll fall, Izuku thought as he rapidly recovered. He watched as the glove shot straight for his face, but Izuku veered to the left just in time to punch him in the face where the scales had fallen. Tatsuya stumbled as a result, and Izuku seized the opportunity. Until there were no more scales on his visible body except for his legs and back, he continued to wailing on the areas where scales were missing and occasionally punched him to loosen a few more. Tatsuya's quirk gave him a strong offensive and defensive ability, but the scales needed a lot of stamina to stay on his body, so all he could do was take the hits. But because they were only struck once and weren't put under any more pressure, they fell off, exposing his body to the gloves of his opponent. He was referred to as the Unstoppable Dragon because of the strength behind his scales, which gave the impression that he was under a lot of pressure. He finished fights fast to save stamina. Unfortunately, it would not be this match, as he was sent sprawling to the ground by a final uppercut to the chin. Down, shouted the referee, with the crowd applauding behind him. Izuku was relegated to a neutral corner of the ring, where he would be ready to fight if his opponent got back up. 1, nothing. 2, still no response. 3. Tatsuya's right arm moved as he twitched. 4. He began using his right arm to support himself. 5. The left arm came next, slowly but steadily raising him to his feet. 6. Tatsuya began to raise his head off the ground. 7. He uttered strainedly, struggling to get up even though he was running out of energy. 8. He exclaimed as he pushed himself up, nearly putting a knee underneath himself to do so. 9. Then he collapsed, unconscious. Izuku turned to face the man, who was now being supported by his team as spectators began to pour into the ring. 10. Knockout, he exclaimed. Just as Izuku and Kato were ready to begin answering reporters, a loud but recognizable voice appeared. Everyone, Izuku in particular, began scanning the area after hearing the words, "Fear not, for I am here. They all stopped at the screen above the arena to see All Might standing there. As the number 1 hero emerged and landed in front of the winner of this match, reporters shifted. Though the press behind him only grew more intense at his appearance, he said, "Congratulations on the victory, young Midoriya. I need to have a word with you and your teacher, so may we head somewhere away from the press?" Izuku stammered, Sure. And the three walked off to Izuku's locker room. Eventually, Izuku was excitedly buzzing around the locker room when the three of them entered. To the hero's perplexity, he exclaimed, "Oh my goodness, it's All Might, holy cow, what a surprise, can I get your autograph?" Kato said, "Don't worry, that's his." Eager face. As Izuku packed that and his boxing gear in a bag, All Might laughed and signed the notebook that was given to him anyhow. Izuku questioned, "Kato-sensei, how do you even know All Might?" He remarked, "We go back a while." The young boxer questioned, "So what brings the number 1 hero to see me?" All Might remarked, "Well, that's something you need to sit down for." So Izuku did, and he spoke again. Izuku responded, perplexed as to why he would ask, "How did you get into boxing in the first place?" To All Might's surprise, Izuku revealed, "I never told anyone this, except for Kato, but I'm Quirkless." "Then how are you able to beat foes like that Tatsuya fellow in the ring?" he inquired. Izuku said, "Let me get to that. Anyways, so despite me being told I wasn't getting a quirk anytime soon, I still wanted, and want to, be a hero who could save people with a smile as you do." He continued, "Mom signed me up for boxing to learn how to defend myself from bullies before she was attacked, and that awakened something in me. Seeing those boxers go at it made me think about what I wanted, and when I saw the featherweight championship fight, I knew I had to be a part of it, hero or not. All Might, I want to become the greatest hero, but I also want to become featherweight champion. I'm going to try the UA entrance exam when it comes, no matter the result. If I fail, I'll opt for General Ed. But I will find a way to be a hero." Izuku responded with a grin. Kato patted Izuku's back and remarked, "That's my boy." Izuku nodded, and the hero continued, "Kid, I need you to answer a few questions from All Might here, okay? If you had the chance to become a hero, would you take it?" he inquired. "Do you even need to ask? I suppose not. Next, if you were a part of the hero course, how would you balance that with your boxing career?" "I've had a training schedule since last year that gives me time for studying and spare time for more training or simple leisure. If a match were to be intersecting with school, I would accept supplementary classes to catch up." Izuku calmly and resolutely stared into his eyes as he answered, "I guess that's covered. Now, last question. If someone gave you the option to accept a power and become both a pro hero and boxer, or remain quirkless and stay just a boxer, what would you choose?" Izuku was perplexed by All Might's laughter as he said, "I would become a hero without question." Kato grinned. He said, "Guess you found the one, Toshinori?" As All Might appeared as a blonde skeleton in a very loose-fitting suit and was suddenly engulfed in a cloud of smoke. As he laughed, the skeleton said, "Of course. You made a convincing argument, my good friend." Wait, All Might?" exclaimed Izuku, startled. He paused to cough up a large amount of blood and exclaimed, "Yeah, it's me, the number 1 hero, All Might hack." Izuku pointed to All Might collectively and questioned, "How did this happen?" All Might showed Izuku a big scar on his abdomen and explained, "It was an injury from a fight kept private. You see, kid, All Might's been looking for someone to pass the torch to, and I pitched you into him." Kato responded. Why me?" inquired Izuku. Izuku blushed at the compliment and swiftly returned to the subject at hand. "Well, you have the heart of a hero in ya. Remember all those times you helped out people just because you could? So you want me to be your successor? But I'm quirkless, aren't there other people who can do better?" he inquired. All Might briefly considered his former sidekick's pick, Mirio Tagata, but that thought vanished when he recalled what Kato had told him about the young man standing in front of him. Then, as Kato glanced at Izuku with some irritation, he abruptly slapped him in the back of the head. As All Might coughed once more, Kato remarked, "I told you to stop putting yourself down so much, kid. Anyways, care to let him know?" Izuku began to cry and grinned despite it. "I will. Young Midoriya, I have an offer to present to you. Will you take on my power and become the next symbol of peace?" she said. "Absolutely." Next to Toshinori Yagi and Kato Hansuke, Izuku Midoriya was spotted at the Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. He was honing his footwork by avoiding small objects that were thrown at him by the 2 trainers and avoiding a pickup truck behind him. As of right now, the boy has avoided a hatchet, a microwave, a a refrigerator, 2 tires, a broken pair of gloves, and most recently, a big pipe wrench. All Might threw a ball at the boy who had dodged, shouting, "Come on, young Midoriya. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball." Izuku's hands were bound behind his back in order to make this training effective. Izuku was avoiding being struck by anything they threw at him because he was afraid of being struck by any of the incoming projectiles, so it had somehow worked. While hiding beneath a brick, he screamed, "You do realize I'll die if I'm hit, right?" Kato stopped himself from hurling a huge sword composed of various blades and said, "Oh yeah, should have thought of that." Whoops! Now that it was free, he stretched Izuku's arms and untied them before throwing it back into the pile. "So besides nearly dying, why are we training here by cleaning up this beach?" Izuku inquired. "Well, young Midoriya, we need you to build more muscle before the entrance exam. Your current body mass is enough, but more muscle would be extremely helpful when being given one for all," the mighty said. Izuku inquired, "And cleaning the beach? It helps you build muscle for absolutely free," he replied. All Might began to perspire a little as he said, "I have a gym. And weights. Those are also free." You're being a good person by cleaning the beach? People have been illegally dumping trash here, and being a hero is more than just fighting villains." He tried, and the child sighed. "That makes a lot of sense, actually. Anyways, what else is next?" Izuku responded. Over the course of the next week, Izuku would load heavy items like refrigerators, scrap metal, and a variety of other heavy trash into the same pickup trucks every day. Kato would occasionally stop to give Izuku a boxing lesson. In order to prevent the boy's fists from suffering as much damage when he attacked villains with more resilient resistance, he would only apply boxing tape to his hands and harden his punches by striking harder objects. To go along with this, the two had constructed dummies out of whatever they could find. The two trainers were aware that Izuku trained in this manner. They were unaware of the covert training regimen he followed. At night, wearing a green tracksuit with his boxer outfit underneath, the boy made his way back to the beach. After going through the remaining trash, which had been cut in half since the training started, he came to a door that was hardly functional. Izuku opened it with a smile on his face, seeing a scene he had seen since the start of his beach training. That door and the sky above were the only ways to enter the vast circle of sand that was walled off by trash. It contained the same equipment as the gym he often visited, but it was an improvised version of the same tools and machines he used to develop his fighting skills. He used metal pipes or poles as weights to hold up paint buckets filled with sand or seawater. The amount he filled the buckets with at the time dictated how much he lifted. He had an old car lift for pull-up bars, and rather than using a mat on the floor, he would let the sand challenge him as he tried to maintain proper form as it moved around as a result of his movements. A continuous set of pillowcases inside a burlap sack, each filled with sand to increase durability for his intended use, served as a makeshift punching bag. Supported by an old rope and held together in its weaker spots with a roll of duct tape, it was suspended from the old car lift he would use for pull-ups. Izuku put on his gloves and started repeatedly hitting the improvised training apparatus, enjoying the sensation of his gloves hitting a hard surface. You have to make do with what you have, even though he would prefer it to be a real punching bag. He practiced his footwork and combos against the bag for an hour. He took a minute to rest his arms before lifting the weight of the paint bucket filled with sand and balancing it on his shoulders. He dead-lifted the buckets while squatting with the makeshift weight and resting on the cushions of a broken couch, then set those down as well. After making sure his shoes were in good condition, he practiced his footwork in the sand once more by swerving through tires and obstacles that he had driven into the ground. About an hour later, he changed back into his tracksuit and walked out of his private training area, hiding the entrance with a wooden pallet. After a month, All Might in his muscle form and Kato were riding a two-person bike directly in front of Izuku, who was jogging through the streets of Musutafu while wearing a pink tracksuit. Kato shouted, "Catch up, kid," since Izuku was now having trouble catching up due to overtraining. The two trainers paused and quickly turned back to the boy as he fell to his knees. As Kato examined him, All Might inquired, "Young Midoriya, are you alright?" As Izuku continued to pant, his original trainer said, "Kid, you've been overworking yourself, haven't you?" Izuku gasped and took a sip of water from Kato. "I know. I've been blessed with boxing training, but I still need to train harder to catch up to all of my peers." "There is no need for that, young Midoriya. You've done better than I had originally hoped," shouted All Might. "I would have you clean the rest of the trash, but we have much less time and Hansuke-kun wanted you to start training with one for all early." Kado sighed, and the number 1 hero took on a guilty look. Oh please, if I didn't say anything, you would have given it to him the morning of the exam, Toshinori. He gave the weary boy a quick pat on the back and helped him to his feet. I was one of All Might's friends before you became the symbol of peace. I want you to get adjusted to the power Toshinori's about to give you because if you don't, it may hinder your boxing career. The trainer stated. Wait, how? Exclaimed Izuku, startled. If you use way more power than your body can handle, you may overload your body and break your body before you can save anyone. The mighty said. He laughed in his muscular form and then quickly deflated and coughed up blood. Be glad you had training prior we met, otherwise your limbs would have burst if I gave you one for all right away, he said. The statement caused Izuku's eyes to widen, but Kado cut him off. Don't worry kid, this is why we're going to start training you with one for all early, he replied. After removing a hair from his head, All Might handed it to Izuku. He exclaimed, now. Eat this, to Izuku's bewildered disgust. The DNA needs to be transferred for the quirk to be spread. It's much less gross than drinking his blood or something along those lines. Kado replied. Okay. I want to be absolutely sure before you give me this power. You just asked me 3 questions and then gave me approval. Why was it that simple? It feels way too easy, even with the training. The fighter responded. All Might responded by laughing, which further perplexed him. All Might said, I was waiting for you to ask, young Midoriya, Hansuke-kun has already demonstrated to me that you have the qualities of a deserving hero. I may have also shown him a combination of your fighting talent, this, and some of the other good things you've done without incentive, but all I did was show him how you split your fight money between charity, your mother's hospital bill, and living expenses, Kado continued. Do you recall that hospital stay? And the time you stood up for one of your opponent's drunken supporters after a game? Izuku answered, yeah, I remember those. Events like those that reveal your true self are far more powerful than words. I simply ask him questions to gain a basic understanding of your personality. I've known him since college, anyway. With a few tears welling up in the boy's eyes, Kado explained. He knows me well enough to believe me when I tell him that you have what it takes with confidence. After acknowledging his mentor's speech with a nod, Izuku ate the hair and, after much effort, managed to get it down before pausing for a moment. Young Midoriya, how are you feeling, now? I don't feel any different, he said. Even though the hair itself won't digest, one for all will run through your veins in the same amount of time as food would normally digest. Now, let us train some more while one for all becomes a part of you, All Might said. Izuku smiled, and for the next hour, he continued to practice his punching technique against Kado, who was holding boxing mitts, while they continued to work on his footwork in the sand. To the surprise of his 2 trainers, Izuku abruptly stopped at the end of the hour. I believe I sense it. Izuku uttered those words as a stream of green and red lightning began to shoot out of his body. Young Midoriya, give yourself permission to soak up the strength of one for all. Izuku turned toward the ocean and fired off a right cross, the power that escaped from his fist carrying sand and splitting the water's surface, wing and raw power shooting forward until it finally stopped. All Might yelled, in his muscle form again, and Izuku fell to one knee, his right arm purple from bruising, and he was fortunate that none of his bones were broken. Well, Kado remarked, we're going to need a way for the kid to figure out how to balance all that power, or he's going to be breaking a lot of bones in the future. Izuku thought of his most recent boxing match, recalling how Tatsuya had spread his scales across his entire body, covering every part to protect his body from incoming punches. Attempting to replicate that with one for all, Izuku started to kick up more sand and wind as he activated one for all. He felt as though he didn't need to call upon a large amount of strength, so he tried to limit himself to a safer percentage, but he unintentionally let it slip. The effect remained, though, as both teachers grinned proudly. Oh my goodness, startled, All Might screamed, how did you pick that up so fast? Did he ask? I just remembered how the scales on my most recent opponent, Tatsuya, dispersed throughout his body. He described how he felt the surge of one for all in his body and said, I tried to lower the amount of power in my body, but I accidentally let it slip and lost it. So, if you activated it now, how much do you think you could use right now? Kado inquired. I would say. Kado-sensei, no more than 8%, Izuku said. Are you able to move? All Might inquired. Let me see. Izuku then reactivated one for all, allowing only the bare minimum of energy to enter his body, and tried to move forward while concentrating on the new power. He moved slowly toward All Might, his body training with each tiny movement he made with the mage, and then he tried to begin walking in Kado's direction, but his focus wavered and he deactivated one for all, falling to one knee with the two trainers running to his aid. "I'm fine," he said. "It's just exhausting to try to keep up that level of energy." Izuku stood up, picked himself up, and turned to face his two trainers. "Kid, we'll teach you how to manage one for all in the future," Kato said. "You can rest for the remainder of today and tomorrow." Izuku grinned before becoming alert to something. "All Might, you are aware that a well-known person is always followed by publicity, aren't you?" Izuku inquired. Although he was not yet a household name, the media occasionally approached him following his triumphs. "My boy, why do you ask?" All Might answered. "How will we explain your unexpected presence at my boxing match?" Izuku's statement caused the hero to halt in his tracks. "You only really make cameos at global events or national championships, but my fight was neither." All Might said, "Oh. We can come up with something. What if we say that? Toshinori, if you say he's family, that'll only bring more unnecessary press down onto the boy, as well as villains." Kato got involved. "Consider a sponsorship. We can say that I'm a boxing fan, and I wanted to sponsor young Midoriya's career," All Might stated. "More press will come, but then again it'll excuse your appearance from that match." Kato continued, "It'll also allow you two to interact without too much press after the initial reveal." To the surprise of his two mentors, Izuku responded, "That's true, but I already have a sponsor." "Who is it?" Kato inquired. "The family of Yaoyorozu. We had previously met their daughter. Remember how Yaoyorozu Momo's parents were fans? That's why she offered me a sponsorship. I have more than enough for my mother's treatment because of them," he said. "My boy, congratulations. That does, however, complicate my plan. What if I claim to be using my fame to promote boxing in Japan in general? If we're seen in public, they will think I'm advocating the sport," All Might said, recollecting that although boxing's popularity as a whole increased due to quirk usage in the ring, the sport's fanbase was still smaller than that of other industries and sports. Upon returning home that day, Izuku filled an entire notebook with ideas for using one for all heroically and into his boxing career. Until the moon rose, a glowing could be seen from the Midoriya apartment, where Izuku was practicing handling the power of the number one hero. Izuku replied, "Let's go with that," and went on to enjoy the remainder of his day. The following day, while he would have used the day to train, no match was scheduled for the near future, and there was still a month until the entrance exam, so Izuku wandered around Musutafu, mostly seeking ideas on how to help him when it came time. He managed to get a decent handle on one for all the night before, but he felt like he could do much more before Ua. He stopped in a convenience store to pick up a large bottle of water, and after he left, he ran into a familiar black ponytail. "Yaoyorozu-san," he said, drawing her attention, and the girl brightened when she saw him approaching him with a big smile. "Midoriya-san, it's nice to see you again," she replied. He answered, "Same with me. What brings you out here, nervous to speak to the attractive girl again?" he asked. "I was genuinely bored. I'm mostly waiting until next month," she remarked. "Oh, you're also heading to Ua?" She nodded and told him how to get in when he asked. When she said, "I got accepted through recommendation," his eyes widened. "Really? For someone to have suggested you, you must be truly remarkable?" She blushed a little when he said that. "Yeah. Thank you," she said tremblingly. "Do you want to take a stroll with me?" He flushed when she asked. "Oh, sure," he answered, if you're okay with me." The two strolled around Musutafu and caught up on their activities over the previous month, with the girl claiming that Momo had studied a lot and committed the molecular formulas for hundreds or even thousands of objects to memory so that her quirk could make them. "Wouldn't a book or list of formulas be more helpful than just memory? Why, Yaoyorozu-san?" Izuku inquired, and Yaoyorozu gave a nod. "I'm writing a book of formulas for UA, but I still need to know the formulas for some objects in case of emergencies," she responded. Well, that is true." He blushed in shame, then froze. "Wait a second, that's still incredible," to the girl's surprise, he said. "How?" she inquired. "It takes an insane amount of memory and learning to be able to recall the molecular formula for objects on the spot or whenever you want. How long did it take you to reach your current position?" With joy in his eyes at being able to talk to someone about quirks at last, he asked. She held out a hand and a Russian doll that resembled the girl wearing her current attire emerged. "I would say I've been studying and memorizing molecular formulas since I was about 6, when I could begin to master basic formulas." "You are a genius, Yaoyorozu Momo." She flushed when he said, "I could hardly imagine how much hard work that would require." She answered, "Thank you, Midoriya-kun. I hope that I can see you at UA," he replied. "I agree." He nodded when she wished him luck on the entrance exam. Many thanks. Following that, the two kept strolling around together until she was asked to leave again. They split up, and Izuku went back to her house. Eventually, after an intense hour of training, Izuku stood and faced his recently used punching bag, activating One for All, spreading the power across his body and clenching his fists as he felt the 8% he was practicing with flow through him. After he became accustomed to the strain of tensing muscles due to the energy flowing through his body, he decided to try some basic warm-ups with this activated. Izuku preferred training to doing nothing because it allowed him to do something productive while advancing his career. Izuku Midoriya began by doing a few light hops in place, then moved around in a circle, dodging hits from an imaginary opponent, and jabbing at the air. After he was confident in his abilities, he went to his bag and began practicing the same punches, but with One for All, they were much faster and stronger. The bag shook and rattled from the constant pressure Izuku Midoriya put on it while he was practicing basic punches, his strength pushing it to the point where the boy was afraid he might break the chain. After he was done, he took off his gloves and boxing tape, and sat down to rest and reflect on his new power. Izuku noted in a notebook that, One for All is amazing, yet very dangerous. If I use too much, I could not only kill someone, but destroy myself in the process. Izuku nodded after finishing his writing in the notebook, saying, I also need to figure out a name for it so that people won't question what my quirk is called. The boy then considered how One for All operated, and when he activated it, the strength and speed that enveloped his form felt more like someone covering every part of him with a cowl than a crashing wave or even a heavy surge. With his eyes brightening, Izuku muttered, wait a second, and wrote the new name on the notebook's cover. Notes on quirks. Complete cowl. After taking a bath and changing into shorts, he headed to his bedroom to stretch in order to relieve the pain he knew would come the following morning if he didn't. Once he was under the covers, he collected his thoughts and reviewed the thrill of practicing with One for All the following day. Just before he went to sleep, a second little voice in his head said that it would be good to see Yaoyorozu Momo again. Izuku spent the next month learning how to better control One for All at 8%, and the time passed quickly. He attempted to transfer the power to a single finger or limb, but this resulted in the limb or appendage becoming strained right away after use. Furthermore, he and Kato agreed that if he were to use his power during a boxing match, he should not use more than 5% because doing so could cause someone to be injured far more severely than they should be during a match. Meanwhile, communication with Momo grew. Once a week, they would get together to discuss their days, training opportunities, and other topics. Izuku had been looking forward to this moment since junior high, the UA entrance exam. UA campus. Early that morning, Izuku approached the UA campus and saw the faces of incoming freshmen and eager upperclassmen. Before his exam started, he was wearing his green tracksuit with a hood over his eyes to avoid drawing unwanted attention. He was holding the strings in his hand, already wrapped in boxing tape, and his black boxing gloves hung over his shoulder. He walked forward to the main auditorium to get details and take the written portion, marveling at the size of the hero school. Before he felt someone bump into his shoulder roughly, he watched a girl with short brown hair enter the school. If he hadn't been practicing footwork for the past few months, he would have tripped over that and instantly caught himself. The boy said, "Get out of my way, fucking extra." Izuku glanced under his hood and saw Katsuki Bakugo. He wanted to say something, but Izuku wasn't prepared to do so until he started the hero course because doing so would cause him to recognize him. Then, eager to finish the debriefing so he could try to get into the esteemed school, he lowered his hood even more and left. Eventually, Present Mike shouted, "Can I get a HEEY?" To the awkwardly quiet audience, he remarked, "Tough crowd, huh?" Present Mike said, "Let's just get this over with." The students would be divided into a series of simulated cities, each teaming with robots that would award points worth 1, 2, and 3. The robots would be dispersed throughout each city for the students to destroy, and they would have a set amount of time to do so. Present Mike smiled when a blue-haired student wearing glasses pointed out that the silhouette of a fourth type of robot was not explained or given a position. The boy nodded and sat down when he said, "Oh, the zero-pointer? It's just a distraction to mess with your work gathering points. Don't bother taking it down, as you gain nothing from it." Sitting between a girl with pink hair and a boy with red hair spikes, Izuku reviewed the facts in his mind before grinning and donning his gloves. The boxer was sent to ground beta with the two people he was sitting with as the students filtered into buses headed for the mock cities. A brown-haired girl tapped his shoulder as they filed out. She inquired, "What are the boxing gloves for?" Izuku finished adjusting his glove strings before removing his tracksuit, saying, "It helps me stay calm. As the featherweight fighter slammed his gloved fists together and assumed his standard stance, a few of the students looked shocked. "Dude, are you seeing this? It's Izuku Midoriya? Who's he? Japan's youngest professional boxer, you dumbass. I heard he hasn't used his quirk in the ring. I guess it's time to see what it is." Izuku narrowed his eyes at the gate, ignoring the chaos around him. As the city's gates opened, he could see lightning forming around him and his body glowing. "Here we go. Full cowl. One for all," President Mike shouted, "Start." Which confused the students. Izuku only heard the bell ringing, which marked the beginning of this prize fight. Admission to the school of his dreams was the reward. As soon as Mike's voice was heard, he took off running and destroyed a one-pointer by performing a jolt haymaker. With the others just beginning to arrive, he got up and continued. He hurried to a pair of twos and destroyed them, ruining yet another one-pointer. Then, knowing that if he gave it his all and not half-assed the test with his new talent, he would have a better chance of getting in, he drew out his entire 8%. Then he ran around the city, using well-placed punches to smash robots left and right while the others around him did the same. A sparkling boy threw a laser from his navel at one, and he rushed past it, punching a robot that was approaching him from behind until it was destroyed. "Merci," exclaimed the glittering boy, and Izuku nodded before rushing away. He smiled at his current accomplishments after destroying 2 more robots. In the meantime, as he, All Might, and several teachers observed the students taking the test, Principal Nezu remarked, "This year's batch of upcoming heroes seems promising." The current performance of a certain Katsuki Bakugo, who was destroying the test robots, was visible to them through the wall of screens. According to Cementos, this one holds potential. We just need to fix his attitude. Nezu responded, "Agreed. But look at this." He and the other educators turned to face the 15-year-old boxer as he smashed another 3-pointer with his gloved fist, sending it crashing to the floor with a hole in its armor. President Mike smiled and remarked, "He will make a good hero as well, if he can somehow balance the life of a boxer with the life of a hero. He already earned a few rescue points by protecting that blonde kid with the laser quirk." Nezu pressed a button and said, "Let's test that theory by adding a new obstacle to the ring, shall we?" The last part of the test started as the city on the screens shook. Inside the test site, after making yet another 2-pointer, Izuku inhaled deeply and hurriedly checked to make sure his glove laces were still intact. He saw people fleeing as a massive metal monster loomed out of a building, and he felt the ground tremble. Izuku asked himself, "Is that the 0-pointer?" And then heard a gasp of pain. As he searched for the source, he noticed the red-haired child from before buried beneath the debris, holding it up trembling to avoid becoming further stuck. Without hesitation, the boxer ran up to him, spoke to him, and punched the boy's debris off. The boy nodded, and he said, "Don't worry, I'm here to help. Are you okay?" The boy said, "We still need to get in there, right away," his body hardening until it appeared as though he had been crudely shipped from stone. Izuku questioned, "What are you talking about?" Before Izuku caught him by the shoulder, the boy nearly ran in and exclaimed, "My friend is still stuck. I'll rescue them. You get yourself to safety," he replied. Then he dashed in and saw a girl with pink skin melting a rock over her leg. As she watched the robot get closer, she exclaimed, come on, melt already, now." Izuku quickly leapt onto a few buildings to get a clear view of the robot after jabbing at the rock to remove the remainder. The boy was in its path when it wound its arm to punch him, but he leapt onto it as it did so and ran up the arm until he was face level with the mechanical titan. To himself, he said, "Here we go." In an attempt to control the boy's strength, he leapt to the robot, let himself drop until he was beneath its chin, and rapidly powered his right arm and fist to full power, ripping off the glove and arm in the process. 8% full cowling. KO punch. He sent the robot's head flying off its body with an uppercut after winding the fist back and shooting it upward. As the robot fell back, he leapt down its legs, landing on the nearest building before leaping back down to the street. Together with the other test takers, the boy and girl from earlier gaped at the young boxer in disbelief. The only pain he experienced was when he attempted to raise his right arm to unlace the last of his boxing gloves. When he turned to face his arm, he saw that it was completely broken, the flesh red and slightly bloody from the last blow. He didn't expect his equipment to survive the test anyhow, so it was okay that the tape beneath the glove was gone as well. He approached the pair from earlier and used his teeth to unlace it, dropping the glove to the ground. He inquired, "Are you two alright?" He nodded, and she said, "I'm Ashido Mina, thanks for the save. My ankle's twisted, but other than that I'm fine." "And I'm Kirishima Eijiru. That was super manly, dude. We should totally spar sometime, he replied. Izuku held his arm and said, agreed. A short elderly woman entered the crowd as they heard an older voice reverberating through the atmosphere. Who is that? That's Recovery Girl. She's the reason Ua is able to do these types of exams, Izuku said. Upon noticing the boy's fractured arm, the woman approached the trio. She then kissed the injured arm, lulling Izuku out just enough so he could feel his arm heal. That's a nasty injury you have there, son. Let me fix that for you. But after the arm kiss, he felt a sudden sense of fatigue. He gratefully accepted the gummy she handed him, and after eating it, he felt better than he had just a moment before. You'll feel fatigued, but that's because I require your stamina to heal you. Eat this, it'll help. She said, now, everyone out. If you passed, you'll get your letters in a week. Scram. As the filing out process began. After Mina and Kirishima gave him their contact information, he discreetly left, putting on his tracksuit again. Since the other glove was useless, he threw it away and took out his phone to call someone. He said, hey, Yaoyorozu-san. She said, hello Midoriya-kun. How was the exam? I think it went alright. What have you been up to lately? He inquired. His face flushed when she said, nothing much, other than studying formulas. Would you like to come over to my house? I have a surprise. He said, are you sure? Excuse my wording. It's a present I made that I would like to give to you, she replied. Oh, alright then. Where should I go? He was asking. After taking a quick shower and getting dressed, he headed to the address she texted him. Eventually, when Izuku Midoriya first saw the Yaoyorozu mansion, he was taken aback because the structure was easily the size of Ua. During his first week as a flyweight, he did visit some of his wealthier opponents, but this was unique because it was the first time he had been invited to a girl's house. He had on a dark gray jacket with the sleeves rolled up, a light gray shirt, and red sneakers. He approached the door and knocked softly. Izuku almost passed out when the door opened a few minutes later. Momo was standing there, wearing athletic shorts that showed off her long legs and a V-neck that unintentionally showed off her ample cleavage. With a tomato-red face, he said, hello, Yaoyorozu-san. She said, hello, Midoriya-kun. As he followed her around the estate, he saw the servants smile and giggle at the couple, but Momo ignored them as they arrived at her room. Come in. Your present is in here. A moment later, she handed him the box she had squatted down to retrieve from her enormous closet. Here you are. It was difficult finding a way for the mechanism to work, but you should try it on, she responded. 2 rolls of plain white boxing tape were visible when he opened the box. When he put the new tape on his hands, he noticed that they were much more comfortable than previous rolls. He was startled when green boxing gloves wrapped around his hands as he assumed his fighting stance. They're no different from ordinary gloves, aside from the fact that they will not break. The formula for it was easy, but the mechanism took me roughly a week to think of, she said, with a beaming face. After saying, these are amazing. Thank you, Yaoyorozu-san. He abruptly embraced her. A sense of shock and embarrassment abruptly replaced the companionship and bonding they were beginning when Momo realized a few important things. 1. She lets her twins loose at home on days when she knows she won't go out. 3. The thin shirts that both of them were wearing were the only things separating their skins. 2. Izuku must have realized that since he was red in the face from feeling the full softness of said twins on his chest. Izuku instantly leapt back, and the two turned their heads away, their faces flushed. So Izuku said, I'm sorry. She turned her face slightly away from his, but the boy found her embarrassed expression to be quite comforting. It's okay. You didn't know. Izuku spoke up again after the two sat in awkward silence. He stood up and said, so, I'll be taking my leave now. I'll see you in Ua, hopefully. He said, I'll see you. Yaoyorozu saw wait, but she cut him off abruptly. He noticed that his face burst into red and began frantically waving around her arms, asking, could you? If you wouldn't mind. Perhaps, maybe. Call me Momo. She began, it's okay if you don't, but. With a slight smile, he said, I can do that, Momo. He left in the hopes of passing so he could spend more time with her after she smiled back at him. However, since fate would now decide what to do with him, all he could do was wait and train. Izuku was discovered sitting at his dining table the week after his run-in with Momo, reading a letter that Ua had given him. When he opened the letter, All Might appeared as a projection. All Might declared, I am here as a projection. Young Midoriya, you scored a total of 50 villain points during the exam. Good work. But that is not all. You also scored through a hidden mechanic the UA staff have in place, rescue points. Budding young heroes must be able to save those in need, and who are we to prevent the true heroes from following their dreams? Due to your actions saving young Kirishima and young Ishido, you have earned yourself 120 rescue points. You have earned a total of 170 rescue points. Congratulations, my boy, you passed. All Might said, while Izuku observed his counterpart's projection. His eyes began to well up with tears of joy as he got to his feet, then sat down again because there was more. Finally, the message concluded, on a different note, I came here to start teaching at UA and find a successor. You are the one to pass the torch. Go now, young one, for this is your hero academia. Izuku then got up and hurried off to share the good news with two people. Eventually, on his way to the gym, Izuku's sprint slowed to a walk when he noticed his mentor standing there, examining a tablet. He called out, Hansuke-sensei, to get the man's attention. As the boxer approached him, Kato said, What is it, kid? He exclaimed with joy, I got in, and the man grinned back. He ruffled Izuku's hair a little and said, Good for you, kid. I'm proud of you. Which caused the boxer to smile. Izuku's eyes widened and he quickly wrapped Momo's gift tape around his hands. You need to do some more training before school starts at the beach. On a side note, I did find you another fight, but it's in a few weeks. He exclaimed, Really? He exclaimed excitedly, What's their name? What's their quirk? I need to know. But Kato silenced him with a head slap. Calm down, kid. I said it's in a few weeks. Besides, you still need to train for the fight in school, which, may I remind you, starts in a few days, he replied. Ah, you're right. At least let me know what his quirk is so I can prepare, Izuku replied. They won't give me the details about your opponent until next week, kid. For now go rest up. We have a long day of training ahead, Kato replied. Izuku replied, leaving the gym, okay then. Then he made the decision to share the good fortune with the only person who had ever started his journey. Eventually, the Musutafu General Hospital was a large, intricate structure that was roughly the size of UA to handle the volume of mishaps involving hero and civilian injuries brought on by villain battles or quirk injuries. After entering the building, Izuku approached the reception desk and noticed a young woman working there. Hello, I would like to make a visit to Inko Midoriya. Where would her room be located? He inquired. A room number appeared when the woman entered the aforementioned name into her computer. She stated, her room is 39H. Izuku went to the room and fixed himself while standing in the elevator after saying, Thank you, miss. As the elevator doors opened, he told himself, Okay, it's been weeks since you last saw mom. Don't be stupid. He wandered around floor H's hallways until he discovered his mother. After inhaling deeply, he carefully opened the door to discover her watching television while seated on the bed. A year ago, a villain attacked Inko Midoriya, a short, somewhat round woman. She contracted a disease from the villain that would gradually weaken her immune system before spreading throughout her body and killing off her cells until she passed away. Fortunately for both of them, a treatment was available to put an end to that, and she was subsequently in excellent health. Since the villain who spreads the disease only attacks once every 2 years, the bad news was that it was a rare disease, and anyone without a salary like Izuku's would have to pay a hefty price for treatment. When she heard the door open, she became alert and saw Izuku standing there in his tracksuit. His words were, Hi, Mom. He approached her, and she gave her son a hug before they parted ways a short while later. It's been a while, Izuku. I saw your match, Inko replied. He stammered, yeah, that. Are you okay with me doing this? Boxing, I mean. He inquired. After inhaling deeply, Inko turned to face her son. I'm okay with you boxing, Izuku. At least I know you'll be alive by the end of every match. Just promise me that no matter what, you will not let yourself fall victim to the temptation of fame. I don't want to lose you, whether that be to life or otherwise, he replied with a nod. Izuku made her smile in gratitude and said, I'll do my best, Mom. When Inko said, on a side note, I got accepted into UA, her mouth fell open, and she turned to look at him. Izuku grinned as she said, Congratulations, Izuku. What department did you get into? The hero course. Exclaimed Izuku. I was able to get in. Izuku honey, are you sure you'll even be able to balance boxing on a professional level in heroism? I have no doubt you'll find a way, but are you ready for the prioritization you'll have to take with your time? She inquired. I have a good system in place. Mom, I know my future sounds dangerous, but believe me when I say that I will make it and I will get you out of this hospital. he said, and Inko was thinking about it. With a sigh of laughter immediately following, Inko whispered to herself, I should have enrolled you in more martial arts then. Alright. You can do both. But promise me you'll visit me monthly. She replied, and if anything dangerous happens to you, you will choose between one or the other. You understand? He walked out of the room after saying, I understand. I need to go prepare for UA, so I'll see you after the next fight. Bye mom. With a sigh, Inko turned to face the closed door. As she lay down and fell asleep, she told herself, as a mother, I should be stopping you, but I know you understand the consequences of your actions. Hisashi, protect our son. After a few days, Izuku became aware of what the boy's alarm meant when he woke up. UA starts today, he exclaimed as he hurried into his restroom. After taking a shower, he quickly found his tie and blazer and put on his shirt and pants. He located them, carried them to a table, and ate a breakfast that he had made the previous evening. After finishing the substantial breakfast, he quickly put on his blazer, tie, and red sneakers, making sure to pocket his new boxing tape. After grabbing his bag, he left his house and made his way to the closest train station. Excited to finally arrive at the school of his dreams, the boxer jogged lightly as he made his way to the campus after reaching his stop. He recognized a face in the hallways before classroom 1A as he was making his way there. Momo said, Hello, Izuku-kun. Her smile was quite beautiful. It's nice to see you once more. In that uniform, she looks incredibly stylish, he pondered. Though a little flushed from his thoughts, he returned her greeting with, Hi, Yayorozu-chan. She told herself, now that won't do. She reminded him of that incident by saying, Izuku-kun, if you're letting me call you Izuku, you should call me Momo, remember? One could almost see the smoke rising from his ears as his face turned red. The girl asked, that's what friends do, correct? She didn't have any male interaction because she didn't have any real companionship with men, who wanted her more for her wealth and body than for friendship. She based her treatment of friends on her few female school friends, with whom she was on a first-name basis. Granted, Momo appeared uncomfortable in his presence, but this was because he was the first boy she had a cordial relationship with besides her father. He tried to come up with an excuse not to be on a first-name basis with the Yayorozu heiress, but he had never interacted with women outside of his mother, a few reporters, and occasional fangirls. She had just given him permission to address her by her first name a few days earlier, so he decided there was no reason to refuse her this. He said, okay then. If it makes you happy, Momo. She smiled, her radiant smile only making him blush more. The two then made the decision to go to the classroom, where Izuku was intimidated by the large doors before they entered. As soon as the doors opened, the two saw a blonde and a blue-haired child fighting. The blonde snarled, who the hell are you to boss me anyways? The boy clarified, my name is Iida Tenya. I'm from Somei Prep School. The blonde exclaimed, an elite, huh? I'll have fun blowing you to a crisp. Is that how you talk to your fellow classmates? Iida screamed. Momo said, how loud? Izuku and Momo concluded that the best way to get past the two was to slip past them and reach two desks. It nearly worked, but not before the blonde child saw them. The blonde snarled, Deku. What the fuck are you doing here? Although everyone's eyes were on him, two students who were seated at the time became excited to see him. Mina exclaimed, hey, it's the boxer guy. According to Kirishima, what's up, dude? Izuku thanked them from the bottom of his heart for stopping Bakugo from doing anything if they hadn't stepped in. In the back, Momo studied the blonde boy's seeming hatred, wondering where the anger was coming from. He said, oh, I'm fine. How are you guys? According to Mina, I'm going great. Thanks for asking. Izuku, who was attempting to shrink himself to nothingness, was the center of attention. But that punch of yours was amazing. You just went up to it and bopped that bot on the chin, and boom, there went its head, it declared. Kirishima continued, oh, and thanks for the save. That was totally manly of you. It really wasn't that amazing. I'm sure anyone else would have done the same. I didn't see anyone else coming in to help us, said Mina, and I had no idea you were a boxer. I saw your most recent match when I looked you up. That guy was ruined by you. Izuku was about to reply when he caught a glimpse of a yellow object slipping through the door from the corner of his eye. Gee guys, huh? What is that? He asked, and the entire class, now present, watched as the creature, with a human-like face, slithered deeper into the room as if he didn't want to be there. You took all 4 seconds to stop talking. The man. Caterpillar. Fusion Thing said, more sensible than I had anticipated from first years, but still not fast enough. It took a juice pouch out of the bag and drank from it, grinning as if to beg death to come sooner. My name is Izawa Shota, and I am your teacher in homeroom. Dropping the bag, he revealed a man wearing a black outfit, long shaggy black hair, and a large white scarf around his neck. He had yellow slit goggles on his neck, which were barely visible from underneath the scarf. He took out a pair of tracksuits and tossed them to the students. Izawa Shota said, "Put these on, and meet me at the training grounds in the back in 5 minutes." The class did as he said and were outside a short while later. Izuku felt someone's eyes burning him, but Momo comforted him by placing a hand on his shoulder. At UA, teachers are free to instruct students in any way they see fit. Therefore, we will begin with quirk assessment and forego initiation. Bakugo, enter the circle. The blonde entered the circle while holding the ball. Which of your throws was the furthest? Izawa inquired. Bakugo stated, roughly 76 meters. He added, try again this time, but use your quirk. The boy smiled and yelled, die, caused an explosion and sent the ball flying. Izawa stated, 703 meters. This will be enjoyable. Mina spoke until Izawa's glare cut her off. You say it's fun. Why don't we make it more enjoyable? Izuku and the rest of the class stared in shock at this before Momo raised her voice. Last place gets expelled immediately. He must be telling lies. She whispered, don't be fooled. Izuku let out a sigh of relief, but he chose to concentrate on the unlikely possibility that it wasn't. However, that is unfair, Uraraka Ochako, a girl with brown hair, said. Unfair? Quirk-related incidents, villains, and natural disasters that injure civilians are not fair. Izuku glanced over the list of tests and saw that they vaguely resembled one of his workout sets. This is just weeding out those who can be heroes from those who can't. Now, let us do the rest of the tests with that in mind. For the next 2 hours or so, the students were taking basic fitness tests, this time incorporating their quirks. Bakugo, the blonde, was waiting with a competitive glare during the running test, so he activated his 8% and took his place while Izawa stood beside them with a stopwatch. Izuku Midoriya, 3.4 seconds, sped alongside Bakugo's explosions to the end, swiftly overtaking them by the time he reached the finish line. Go! Izawa said, and Izuku vanished in a green streak of light. Izuku grinned at his time, but Bakugo could only get more irate. Katsuki Bakugo, 5.5 seconds. When Izuku heard a purple-haired student talking to a 6-armed student about a sexy octopus during the grip strength test, he chose to ignore it and continue with the tests. The purple boy bounced off 2 sticky balls that came from his head during the side steps, earning the closest score to infinity. Momo ended up shooting it out of a cannon to Izuku's surprise. Uraraka scored infinity thanks to her quirk that removed gravity from the ball, and Iida kicked the ball with his engine legs in the final test. Mina and Hagakure, on the other hand, just threw it as far as they could because they didn't have a quirk that allowed them to launch them as far. Izawa said, Izuku Midoriya, step up to throw. Izuku paused in the circle, took a deep breath, and then warmed up his arm and pumped 10% into his pointer finger just before it left his hand, reinforcing the rest of his body with 8% again to prevent breaking his finger. Although his hand now had a swollen finger, it was still fine enough for Izuku to throw punches and complete the remaining tests without too much difficulty. Izawa said, 720 meters. Izuku grinned and started to move in Momo's direction when he heard a figure charge at him while the air echoed with multiple explosions. Deku, you bastard! Quirk, when the hell did you get it? Katsuki Bakugo yelled, speeding towards the boxer. On instinct, Izuku got into his boxing stance, fists up and ready to counter the incoming attacker. The ash blonde was about to make impact, but suddenly he was caught by long strings of cloth and unable to produce explosions. The hell is this? He screamed as he struggled to escape his captivity. This metal and carbon fiber alloy is ideal for captures. With his hair floating and his eyes glowing red, Izawa said, back away from him now or I'll expel you. After the explosive boy was free, the boxer approached Momo, and the girl was staring at him worriedly. With a sigh, Izuku turned to face her. I'm not sure what the history between you two is, but I hope that this grudge won't get in the way of training. She nodded in agreement as Izuku said, I don't really know how it's going to go with him here, but I'll do my best to prevent this from being a major interference from now on. Izawa then displayed a scoreboard of the class rankings to the class, showing Izuku in 3rd place, ahead of Kachan, and just behind Momo and Todoroki Shoto. Minoru Mineta appeared to be in last place on the list, and Izawa gazed at him thoughtfully. Some of the students became alarmed when Izawa stated, On the note of expulsion, it was a tactical ruse. That should have been obvious to all of you. Izuku nodded as Momo stated, there is no way a teacher at UA would expel any student on the first day. Izuku said, thanks for letting me know, she replied, no problem. Copies of the syllabus are available in the classroom. Izuku grabbed his syllabus and walked out of the building as Momo approached him. Grab one before you leave, he said, and the group scattered to gather the object before departing. Hello, Izuku. If we walked home together, would that bother you? Momo inquired. He heard a call and turned to see Kirishima and Mina jogging up to them. I don't mind, he said. Hey buddy, how are you? Would you mind if I joined you? Kirishima inquired. What's good, guys? By the way, I'm going with you, Mina said. Well, yes, I suppose, Izuku uttered. As the three of them started to leave campus and begin their training to become professional heroes, Kirishima remarked, anyways. Izuku awoke the following day ready for anything that might be thrown at him. As usual, he worked out first thing in the morning, then showered and had breakfast. He saw Momo's boxing tape as a kind of lucky charm at the moment, so this time he wrapped it around his hands. He enjoyed the reassuring sensation of the gloves on his hands as he turned on the special feature once more. He noticed that the gloves were the same weight as his typical competitive gloves after testing them out with a few punches. Grinning, he unwraps his hands and puts them in the pockets of his blazer, turning on the gloves. He put on his school bag, which was slightly heavier than before because he had put something new in it. After school yesterday, as Izuku threw the remainder of his daily trash quota into the truck, Kato said, Hey kid, are you thinking of changing the colors of your ring outfit anytime soon? What do you mean? Izuku, clad in his black and gray ensemble, asked. The mentor pointed to his present attire and remarked, What I mean is that the gray and black color scheme doesn't really fit your green hair. It works but it doesn't feel like you in a sense. You get what I mean? He took two black tank tops out of a bag and asked, What about this? The boxer stared at Kato bewildered, and the outfits had trunks of the same color and style. Izuku questioned, Why are there two sets? Well, one's for the ring. The other, you can do whatever you want with it, Kato replied. Izuku accepted both outfits and remarked, Really? I don't see what I would use this extra for, but okay. Presently, Izuku thought to himself, I guess it turned out to be helpful after all. Izuku chose to stick with a standard outfit and boxing shoes without any special features, even though applicants were given the opportunity to submit ideas for their hero costume before the exam. Except, of course, for the gloves that form over his tape when needed. 10 minutes after boarding the train to school, he saw his day's friends as they entered the campus. Hello. He said hello. Kirishima slowed down to allow his new friend to catch up and asked, What's up, dude? Hi, Mina exclaimed, and the vivacious girl smiled. Momo returned the greeting with a slight smile. Hello, Izuku. On their way to school, the four talked, eager to see what the day would bring. So, how were you able to become a boxer in the first place? Asked Mina. After giving her a quick glance and considering his response, Izuku answered. I wanted to pay off my mother's hospital fees, and my gym's owner had recently left for personal issues. From there I remember a man approached me. He apparently saw my untapped potential as a boxer and set up conditions. If I was to win a spar against him, which was extremely difficult since he was a former middleweight fighter, he would provide some funds for her treatment. I accepted and won. The payout, and a thrill for the sport I developed before the fight, led to me going pro with him pulling a few strings. He helped me rise to the professional league, and trained me to become who I am today. Izuku recounted. That's pretty manly of you to fight for your mother's health, bro. Kirishima replied. Though aren't you a little young for professional boxing? I thought the youngest you could be to enter the professional league was 18. Yeah, there were a few complications since I was so young. The league then decided to only pair me up with opponents they believed I would have a shot at beating, and eventually I just integrated into the system. Mina inquired, What's your trainer's name? Before the bell rang, Izuku uttered, Kato. Kato Hansuke. I can't thank him enough for his work and his training. To be honest, I don't know where I would be without him today. After splitting up, the students sat down to await the day's events. After a minute of waiting, they heard a recognizable voice outside the door. The students were on high alert, watching the door, as the voice boomed, I am. They recognized the one hero who could make such a presence. All Might entered the room as the door slid open a moment later. As he completed his sentence, his signature smile adorned his face, and the cape of his Silver Age costume flowed behind him, coming in through the door like a normal person. The class exclaimed, It's All Might. With the exception of Izuku, who grinned upon seeing his other mentor instructing them. In his awe-inspiring voice, he exclaimed, "Today's lesson is combat training. Put these on, and meet me outside. Heroes don't have time to take it slow. As society's future guardians we have work to do." As panels with the names of students on cases holding their hero costumes emerged from the wall. After grabbing their clothes, the students went to the changing areas. As the students started to leave, Izuku took the outfit Kato had given him out of his bag, put on his pink tracksuit over it, and turned on the green gloves. All Might exclaimed, "Looking good, students, now this is a hero class," as he observed their outfits. Mineta Minoru, a short purple kid, taunted the class, saying, "Your hero suit is pink pajamas. Ha, lame," as they turned to see Izuku wearing a tracksuit with a hood over his head. He grabbed the hem of his track pants and the bottom of his hoodie in one hand, laughing to himself at the showmanship he was about to perform. In a spectacular gesture, he tossed them aside, exposing his attire as the pink tracksuit fluttered to the side. A pair of green and white shorts with orange stripes down the sides matched the black tank top that snugly fit his muscular body. His gloved hands were clenched in anticipation, and he was wearing black boxing shoes that ended at the middle of his shins. As he stood prepared for instruction, he slammed his fists together, content with the sound of the gloves hitting his body. He shouted, "Izuku Midoriya, ready to fight." His friends laughed at his antics while the other students looked on in wonder or disgust, the latter coming from one student. Momo remarked, quietly observing how his tank top barely covered his six-pack, "Your costume looks quite interesting, Izuku." "Thanks, Momo," exclaimed Izuku. Then he turned to face her, and as he saw her in her skimpy costume, a drop of blood trickled from his nose. "Izuku, you should be happy that the blood is going to your nose. You're wearing shorts," he thought to himself as he wiped the blood from his face. She smiled when Izuku said, "It looks good, Momo." "Does it? I finished my book, too. Look," she exclaimed as she turned around and found the book draped over her skirt and butt. Izuku chose to nod in response, turning to All Might, pleased that she had also addressed that. All Might exclaimed, "All right, let's begin, you zygotes." After removing a clipboard that had a hidden script on it, he began to teach the lesson. Today's lesson is a heroes versus villains simulation battle. Teams of 2 will be decided through random lots, and be assigned to a random side. The hero team has to either subdue the villains, or locate the nuclear weapon guarded by the villain team. The villains have to prevent the weapon from being captured, to defeat the heroes before the timer goes off. Now, any questions? Right away, a million inquiries were directed at him. Iida was asked, "Why are there random draws for teams? Heroes will have to sometimes work together with others that they do not know. This style of choice seems best to simulate that," said Momo. After hearing the explanation, Izuku nodded and got ready to draw lots. The students matched up with their partners after finishing their drawings. Momo and Izuku were in Team A when she said, "Looks like we're up, Izuku." Izuku replied, "Getting ready for the next battle, yeah, let's get his done." "The first matchup is Team A as heroes and Team D as villains," said the Almighty. Looking to the side, Izuku and Momo saw Bakugo and Uraraka, the latter of whom was intent on killing Izuku. Uraraka and Bakugo were the only students left to enter the building as the students scattered. "Both team have 5 minutes to prepare. The rest, come with me." Momo and Izuku were standing there studying an interior map. Izuku said, "What's the plan, Momo?" Momo contemplated the map before choosing a course of action. "Izuku, I'm going to assume Bakugo will come at you first, so I believe it is best to find a way to root him away before encountering Uraraka," she responded. "What if I distract him while you go? If Uraraka-san gets one touch on me, my gravity will be removed and I would be useless. You have the best options to encounter her while I keep Kachan away from the objective," Izuku replied. "It was Kachan," she said. He answered, "It's a childhood nickname that stuck." He dropped to his fighting stance as Momo produced 3 flash bangs and placed them on her left hip, saying, "Anyway, I need to keep him at bay, since I know he'll only want to focus on me." In order to reduce the noise of her footsteps, she also positioned a piece of rubber beneath her shoes. As she handed him a black metal rectangle with a handle, Momo said, "His quirk is explosions, right? You may need this." "Thank you. Now then, it's time." Momo was standing beside Izuku as he turned to face the building's entrance. After saying into their earpieces, "First battle, begin," All Might nodded at each other before going inside. After running up 2 of the building's 8 floors, they heard Bakugo's footsteps thudding loudly. Before a savage scream could be heard, Izuku and Momo stood back to back, waiting for the threat. Bakugo shouted, "Deku!" and rounded a corner to swing Momo hard to the right. Izuku responded with a right cross to the face, a left hook, and a right uppercut after instinctively pushing Momo aside. He shouted, "Momo, go, I'll catch up," as she nodded and took off running. Gloves up, Izuku leapt back to avoid another explosion. Izuku shouted, "I know you always start with a big right swing." Bakugo growled and lunged at him to detonate another blast. Bakugo barely had time to block a right to the face before Izuku backed up again after he ducked and uppercut him once more, sending the boy flying back. Ever since I started boxing I kept notebooks on quirks to figure out how to get past them. My first entry was you, Kachan. The Deku you see now is not the one who used to be complacent under your foot. The Deku you see before you is the one that's going to kick your ass. I'm going to prove that you're still that weak and worthless Deku from all those years ago. Punch at me all you want, I'll always be better than a worthless freak like you, Bakugo growled as he awoke. Izuku responded, "Try it." As the two started to argue, he refrained from using one for all. Bakugo dashed in to set off an explosion, but Izuku avoided it by jabbing Bakugo twice in the face before he ducked under a broad swing. Bakugo shouted, "Die already, you damn nerd," and hurled two massive explosions in Izuku's direction. When the smoke cleared, he thought the nerd would at least be pushed to the ground, but he was furious to see nothing behind the explosion. "Where the hell did you go?" he cried as he dashed to the stairs leading to the next floor down the hallway. The words, "Show yourself, shitty Deku," were spoken as Bakugo turned the corner and saw nothing. Izuku was slipping by behind him, trying to make as little sound as possible. "Did you lie to me all these years, hiding a flashy quirk from me? Fight me, damn it." Bakugo turned around and smiled just as Izuku was about to pass. He yelled, "There you are." He stunned the boy with an explosion aimed at Izuku. Bakugo missed an explosion in his rear, so he leapt forward and blocked the approaching explosion. Then, after he landed, Izuku rushed in again through his guard and fired off a strong right cross to his face. After racing through a last-second explosion, he grabbed the explosive opponent and used a left hook to throw him to the floor after stabbing him 3 times in the gut. The opponent's eyes widened before he began to growl. "I have to thank you, Kachan. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be as strong as I have become today. I would use my quirk, but I don't want to seriously hurt you." Wasn't his quirk even being used? Why would he hesitate to confront me? Bakugo pondered as he slowly stood up again. Izuku chose to remain silent and dive into a jolt haymaker to escape the blast, saying, "Why the fuck are you holding back? Use it. And I'll stomp you into the ground where you belong." After the punch landed, he rolled behind him and retreated from 2 more, clocking Bakugo in the jaw as he attempted a second blow. This infuriated the explosive boy even more, and by this time he appeared to be untamed with unadulterated rage. "What's the matter, Kachan? I thought you were going to prove your superiority," Izuku asked. His left hook was blocked, but he managed to avoid another explosion. He staggered after receiving an explosion to the face, but he veered to the right to avoid a blast to the right. He grinned at Bakugo and shrugged it off. A pin emerged from Bakugo's right gauntlet as he roared, "I've taken hits worse than that." He screamed, "Then can you take a hit from this?" With a savage smile, he put 2 fingers on the pin. "All my sweat gets stored up in these, allowing me to fire a massive explosion whenever I want. I'll see you in hell," Bakugo screamed. Suddenly, All Might's voice came over the intercom. All Might cried out, "Young Bakugo, do not fire that blast. You are going to kill him." "If I don't hit him directly, he won't die," he answered. He pulled the pin, and a huge stream of fire and raw energy erupted from his gauntlet towards Izuku, who had nowhere to flee. "Use your quirk against me, shitty Deku. I know you won't die from this," he said. It wasn't until he recalled what Momo had given him a subtle smirk to himself that he realized he was stuck. As the explosion struck him and the surrounding corridor caught fire, he withdrew it and hid behind it. Bakugo moved forward slowly in the moments following the impact, smiling at the devastation all around him. "You better not be dead already, duh." Bakugo halted upon noticing an expandable shield that had been scorched and buried in the ground. He couldn't understand why he had concealed it in boxing shorts. Izuku leapt out from behind it, his glowing form encased in red and green lightning, and punched his opponent into the air with a body blow during Bakugo's second moment of confusion at the scene. Izuku exclaimed, "You wanted me to use my quirk, Kachan? Well, here you go," as his muscles were energized by 5% one for all. Much more quickly than before, he dashed in Bakugo's direction and began to punch, 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 his fists turning into blurs as he struck. Bakugo was being used as a punching bag, and each blow was powerful enough to push him back a little. Bakugo was tripped by Izuku's punch to one of his legs, which put an end to his attack. Izuku pulled out the capture tape and said, "It was nice catching up with you again, but I need you to stay here while I help my teammate win." An explosion pushed him back just as he was ready to use the tape on him. He muttered to himself as he put the tape away, "I knew it, that was too easy." With 5% still flowing through him, he inhaled deeply and lifted his gloves. "Too easy. Too easy? I'll show you too fucking easy." Bakugo charged at him, launching himself forward to kick Izuku in the gut with a backflip right after his attack and pop an explosion in his face with both hands. Then he grabbed the boxer's head and slammed it into his knee, continuing. Izuku staggered as he scrambled back up, his nose bleeding from colliding with his knee pad, and another explosion blew him back. Bakugo cried out, "Remember your place, shitty Deku," as he pushed down a radiant palm. Izuku's face was on the floor when Bakugo unleashed a massive blast, followed by quick blasts that caused a hole in the ground. He mockingly exclaimed, "And that's what you get for looking down on me," expecting to see a nerd who was badly burned and unconscious. Rather, he instinctively turned around when he noticed explosive marks on the concrete. Face to face, Izuku responded to this action by greeting his turn with a right hook. Izuku decided to raise the percentage to his current limit of 8% in order to put an end to the fight because he felt that it wouldn't be over unless someone intervened and stopped the two. He vanished in an instant, leaving strained but tolerable muscles. Without giving Bakugo a chance to react, he suddenly materialized in front of him and delivered a powerful liver blow to the face. Before winding up his right arm, he threw a left hook and then a right, driving a hard left into Bakugo's gut to double him over. 8%. One for all. Punch KO as his glowing right glove struck Bakugo's already damaged chin again, Izuku shouted inside his head. With a heavy thud that indicated unconsciousness, the explosive opponent's head snapped up to stare into the ceiling. The force and momentum caused him to backflip through the air as he struck a wall. As he got closer, Izuku paused to catch his breath, praying he was unconscious. To ensure that he couldn't get away if he managed to free himself, he turned off the gloves and secured him with the capture tape. The boxer rose, presumably toward Momo and the target. Hearing the sound of fighting, he climbed 3 floors and put on his gloves to enter and assist. He was apparently unnecessary once he got inside because Momo smiled and won the game by placing her hand on the objective. "Hero team wins!" exclaimed All Might, with Momo earlier. Momo left Izuku behind and headed straight up to the bomb's location, using a hastily constructed heartbeat sensor to locate Uraraka. She sprinted up 3 floors before a door blocked her way. Uraraka was at the other end of the room, visible through the keyhole. The brown-haired girl was sulking because she was the only one left to protect the goal after her partner deserted her. As her skin glowed with the power of creation, Momo paused to consider her breaching strategy. She retrieved a sledgehammer from her skin and a flashbang from her belt, winding the hammer for a powerful blow. She threw the stun device at the girl just before it went off and smashed the door open. Uraraka was blinded when it went off, but she was able to partially ignore the blindness because of her helmet's visor. Knowing from Izuku's pre-round analysis that she shouldn't approach her closely, Momo charged her while holding a staff. In a low sweep, she struck the girl's leg and then her side. The opponent had just gotten up and was making her staff float when Momo spotted the objective and was ready to run for it. Momo prepared her counterattack and jumped to the side as Uraraka lunged at her. Made completely of rubber, the girl's creation was intended to push more than to cause pain. The hammer bent from the spin as she spun in a circle, and then it struck the girl's back, sending her flying into a wall with a squeak, just like her partner. Momo didn't want to give her time to heal, so she ran for the target and touched it as soon as Izuku walked in. Hero team wins afterwards, after the battle. Apart from Bakugo, who was still unconscious and in the infirmary, the class was reunited after that battle. All Might reviewed the first group's performances with the other students after they had all assembled, offering his own insights. He exclaimed, "Good work, students, Team A did splendidly in combating Team D, but who was the MVP of that match?" Momo said, "It was Izuku." The boy's eyes widened in reaction. "You were able to formulate a plan at the beginning, analyzed which of us were perfect for our opponents, and was able to keep a major threat at bay as I went to do my part of the plan," she said with a grin on her face. As All Might went on with the lesson, Izuku gave the girl one of his own. In groups of 4, the students emerged, and the class watched as they fought their own battles. The majority of the remaining battles were able to showcase the inventive ways in which their classmates used their quirks. The pupils were on the edge of their seats for some, frightened by others, and so on. Not at all. Mineta had thrown his hairballs at his enemies during one battle because he thought it was a good idea. His partner Iida was unable to defend the bomb because they were dispersed throughout the floor. But this also led to his rivals Sato and Shoji becoming trapped during their breach and defaulting to a villain victory. After a few matches, Bakugo woke up to witness Todoroki destroy the hero team by freezing the entire building. His opponents were frozen inside the building they were supposed to defend as soon as the match began. When it was all over, All Might excused the class by saying that Izuku needed to go to Recovery Girl because he had some burns and other injuries. The class was waiting for him when he returned to the classroom after putting on his uniform again. "That was amazing," exclaimed Mina, amazed at her friend's strength. Kirishima went on, "Yeah, it was totally manly dude." Izuku retreated a little. Thanks. He mentioned. He noticed that a crucial figure was missing from the room. Izuku inquired, "Where's Kachan?" From his position in the crowd surrounding the boxer, Kaminari questioned, "Kachan?" From her position, Momo said, "He means Bakugo-san. He's at the gate, if you mean to talk to him," she continued. "Thanks Momo," he exclaimed as he ran to the gate. Then Mina smiled as she turned to face the girl with the black hair. The girl blushed slightly when she asked, "Izuku, huh? You dating him or something?" Mina was not having any of it, so she said, "No, we are not dating. We're just good friends." "Not even a crush? I can tell you want to be more than just that," she replied. Momo decided to ignore the problem for the time being and looked thoughtfully. "Let's go see what the boys are doing. I fear it will not end well," she replied. Mina blushed and said, "What, protective over your boyfriend?" Momo, who was already making her way to the gates, declared, "He's not my boyfriend." With Izuku. Bakugo was leaving the school when the boy dashed to the gates. Izuku shouted, "Kachan wait," and the boy turned and stopped. "I won't say how I got my quirk, but I will tell you this. I am not someone you should take lightly. That quirkless child you once saw as a pebble on the side of the road is now a roadblock for you. That's how you feel, huh?" Izuku responded with a rage. With caution, he said, "What the hell are you going on about?" The boy growled as Izuku remarked, "You better be at your best when the time comes if you want to fight me, and truly prove you're superior." "Of fucking course I will. Even if you win that stupid belt I'll kick your ass, now leave me alone. The old hag's gonna get pissed off if I'm home late again," Bakugo replied as he left. Izuku sighed and grinned a little. When he saw Momo coming, he thought to himself, "I don't know if that was a declaration of war or a compliment." Breathing lightly, she said, "Oh good, you're okay." Izuku responded, "Of course I am. Was there a problem?" "Not really, I was just concerned your interaction would end violently," she replied. "Okay then, I guess. Thanks for the concern, but I'm okay. On a different note, wanna walk home together?" he inquired. The two of them left the school after she gave a nod. They thought they went hand in hand, but that was for another time. Due to the media that was presently encircling the students were stranded in front of the main gates when UA started the following day. A reporter questioned, "What's All Might like as a teacher?" Uraraka said, "Well, he's muscular." "Hey, it's the sludge kid," exclaimed a female reporter upon spotting Bakugo, who was glaring. He shouted, "Shut it or I'll blast you." Before they saw Izuku Midoriya, the female reporter and other news crews were considering retreating. "Hey there," she exclaimed as she instantly materialized beside Izuku. He uttered, hi. "So, a pro boxer is aiming to be a pro hero. What's it like to live with both careers in sight?" she inquired. "Well, it's very challenging, to put it bluntly. I'm very happy to be able to train under the guidance of All Might and the other heroes at UA. At the same time my boxing career is also not as hard to balance, since both types of training I receive helps in both of my goals in the long run," Izuku stated. At that final statement, the reporter remembered a crucial detail, and her eyes gazed into his with a closed expression. As she lowered her white shirt to show off her cleavage to the boy, she said, "Speaking of that, I'd like to know more about that private meeting with All Might you had after your last match. Maybe we can go somewhere afterwards and chat." He stepped back a little, and his face flushed. She saw a hand on his shoulder just as she was ready to approach him. Momo pulled him by the hand and said, "Come on, Izuku. We'll be late for class." Momo continued to hold his hand as the UA gates closed behind them. Izuku smiled and said, "Thanks for the save, Momo." As they walked to the classroom, the girl blushed a little but nodded gratefully. Aizawa was now in the classroom, holding an announcement at the front of the room. Aizawa drew the students' attention by saying, "Today we have a special activity, with pick me," cries echoing through the classroom. The class erupted when the teacher announced, "You're picking a class president. May we draw votes to select a proper representative?" Iida responded. Aizawa retreated to his sleeping bag and said, "Sure. Just pick one before I wake up." Mineta and Kaminari stood up, drawing attention. Kaminari declared, "We ought to be the class representatives." Mineta screamed, "Yeah. We'd make the girls' skirts 3 inches shorter," and was promptly disregarded. Izuku gave the two a small glare before letting out a sigh and reaching for a piece of paper. Before putting it in the box, he wrote Momo's name on it, and the class followed suit with their votes. After they were all gathered, it appeared that Momo had received 2 votes and Izuku had received 3. As the class turned to stare at him in bewilderment, Izuku said, "Before I accept this role, I'd like to politely decline. I'm a boxer. If I become class president, I would have to skip a lot of meetings for training and fights." Izuku replied. As the girl grinned broadly at his compliment, he said, "So, I'll give my position to Momo instead. I believe that she would do a much better job with this position than I could." As she introduced Iida as vice president, he said, "I'll let Momo make the decision. Thank you for your understanding. The vice representative position is still open." Lunchroom later. Momo, who was content with her new position, sat down at a table with Izuku. They were accompanied by Mina and Kirishima, who were now savoring their lunch rush meal. Momo grinned and said, "Thank you for giving me the role of class representative, Izuku." "You're welcome, Momo. As I said, I'll be busy in the next few weeks training for my next fight," he replied. "Wait, you have a fight soon?" That Kirishima, who was standing beside him, said. Mina, sitting next to Momo, also glanced at him curiously. Izuku said, "Yeah, I do actually. If you guys want tickets, I can get them for you." But then an alarm went off. Students abruptly started to get up and hurried to the doors, avoiding whatever had triggered the alarm. Izuku shuffled around until he was pressed against the window, watching a swarm of reporters run loose outside as he and his friends were swept into the crowd. Izuku saw them outside and said, "It's the press." He was pressed against the glass, and a moment later Momo was beside him. Izuku shouted, "Momo, it's just the press," and she saw the reporters scurrying around campus. "We must warn the others," she declared. She turned to face Izuku after noticing a sign above the door. The boxer nodded, activated OFA, and jumped to the sign, lifting her in a bridal carry. "Help me up there. I think I can get to them," he said. Taking a megaphone off her leg, Momo switched it on. Momo shouted, "It's just the media, everyone, please calm down," which undoubtedly caught the attention of the students who were trying to escape. As the teachers attended to the reporters outside, they started to relax. After that, the rest of the day went pretty normally until the teachers noticed an odd-looking enormous hole in the school barrier. In fact, deliberate. President Mike nodded as Aizawa stated, "We need to stay in guard. It may very well have been a result of villains." The following day. Once again, the students were seated in class, and Aizawa was prepared to talk about the upcoming task. As the students started to smile with delight, he said, "Today is something special. We're taking a small field trip to begin your rescue training." As the students complied with the instructions, Izuku, dressed in a pink tracksuit, and the others took their seats and headed to the training facility. "Put on your hero costumes and load up on the bus." The pupils started talking as Izuku stood between Momo and Kirishima. Kaminari said, "So, Midoriya-san, you're popular, right? If you mean my boxing career, then a little bit. Why?" Izuku responded. Izuku sighed as he said, "Y'all think you can, hook me up with one of those ring girls?" "No, I can't. I don't really talk to them. They're more like mascots, but they don't really talk to the fighters in the first place." Izuku responded. He said, "Besides, I refuse to use my fame just because someone wants a girlfriend." Kaminari was blinded by the boy's humility. The next person Tsuyu spoke to was Izuku. Izuku began to perspire when she remarked, "I like to say what's on my mind. Your quirk is similar to All Might's, Ribbit." He said, "Oh, really? It's true it's similar but, if I end up using too much at once it would begin to hurt me as well. All Might doesn't have that weakness." Izuku responded. Before responding, she gave a nod. "That sounds reasonable. I'm also grateful fame hasn't gotten to your head. Otherwise you may have ended up like Bakugo-san," she replied. The boy replied, "What was that, Kermit? I'll fucking kill you, instead." "She's right. I've known you for 2 days and I already know you have the personality of a sewer," Kaminari continued. Bakugo exclaimed, "Shut it, you damn Pikachu," as the other pupils burst out laughing. This is new. Before their bus arrived at the facility, Izuku thought, he's actually being teased. A spacesuit-clad hero greeted the class as they entered. "It's the space hero, 13, Uraraka cheered. They greeted the students, saying, "Hello students. Welcome to the USJ, or the Universal Simulation Joint." While the students were considering another location that shared the same 3 letters as the title. When they saw that the symbol of peace was missing, they whispered to Aizawa, "Where's All Might?" Aizawa answered, "He went over his limit again. Now, before we begin, I have some things I would like to discuss." 13 responded. "You are students, learning how to not only improve, but enhance the abilities your quirk gives you. However, some of your quirks, if abused or mishandled, can not only become a major threat to others but yourselves as well. Take mine for example. I can produce black holes, but those could easily cause disasters in cities and cause the destruction of many populations across the world. You are here to practice your abilities without the potential for fatal accidents occurring." And so, 13 was nearly done explaining when a black and smoky portal appeared. A man with pale blue hair emerged, his hands covering his arms and face, a red eye peeking out from between the white fingers of one hand. Aizawa and 13 were forced to take a defensive stance in front of the students as a sizable group of figures appeared behind him. "I was informed that All Might was supposed to be here. No matter, a few dead students and heroes will definitely draw him out," he replied. Kirishima questioned, "Aizawa-sensei, are these some sort of robots?" The students paled at the thought of it when he said, "No. These are real villains. Someone make contact with the school." As 13 approached the edge of the stairs where the villains were below, Izuku activated his gloves. The covers over their fingers opened, preparing them to use black hole on the villains. A man formed of smoke materialized in front of the hero's black hole before it could affect the villains. Behind 13, a second portal materialized, tearing apart their back and using their own black hole to hold them until the hero deactivated it, rendering them inoperable. 13. Shouted Aizawa. "Students, stay here and guard 13. I need to take care of these villains." Izuku said, "You can't do it alone, sensei. Let me help." Aizawa put his goggles over his eyes and replied, "No, even though you're a boxer, you're still my student. It's my responsibility to protect all of you." Kaminari exclaimed, "My communicator's not working. I think someone's tampering with communications." Aizawa jumped into the crowd to fight the villains, saying, "I need one of you to escape and make contact with the school for backup. Now then, keep 13 safe and survive." The students remained vigilant until the portal man reappeared. "No hard feelings, students, but I must separate you until All Might arrives," he replied. He dropped half of the class into random zones after leading them through a portal. One of the few people taken in, Izuku, witnessed Momo and Jiru land next to him after being dropped into the landfall zone. A villain exclaimed, "Look what we have here," as the trio rose to their feet. Izuku stiffened as he said, "Let's get him, boys. Leave the red one though. I want to have some fun with her." As the villains charged, Jiru plugged her ear cords into her boots to push back a few more, while Momo made a staff to fight a few. Activating 8%, he screamed, "Don't you dare touch Momo," and immediately focused on the group leader. The man was about to use his quirk, but Izuku's glowing green glove prevented him from doing so. After doubling the man over with a powerful left to the gut, the boy threw an uppercut that sent the man over one of the fictitious mountains and charged 10% into his right fist. As he defaulted full cowl back to 8%, he was able to ignore the slight strain on his hand. He rushed in to leap over one of the villain's charges, landed a jolt haymaker on a ranged villain, then used his foot to stop the fall. He then twisted around to strike the first villain's legs hard, tripping him, and hurling a powerful right downward into his face. Momo was making a big blanket, and he ran back to the two girls. With flash bangs and tear gas grenades protruding from her back and the trio shielded by their cover, she yelled, "Get in," as he slid into the enormous cover. She handed them gas masks and said, "Here. Put these on." When the trio heard the flash bangs going off and the sound of people choking, they came out to find the villains unconscious on the ground. The three eliminated the remaining villains after the gas subsided, with Izuku taking a deep breath before eliminating the final one. "Not that that's taken care of, let's..." He abruptly stopped himself after observing a significant alteration in Momo's attire. To get her attention, he said, Momo? She tilted her head, wondering why he was so red, and said, yes, Izuku. Jiru was going to explain why, but it was unexpected to see their influential classmate so upset. She became confused when he said, why your CCCC costume? When she saw that her assets were clearly visible to him, she looked down and instantly became redder than Kirishima's hair. Izuku turned as she quickly wrapped her arms around her bare chest. With an angry red face, he exclaimed, I'll let you take care of that, while she was adjusting her costume. After a minute, her costume was fixed, and the two of them put the recent scene out of their minds and concentrated on the current problem. We need to regroup with the others, he stated. We should go to the main area we started at, Momo replied. As the three hurried to the main lobby, Jiru said, I agree. It's where we'll all go anyway, so let's head back there and hope everyone comes back. When they arrived at the stairway, they witnessed Aizawa decimating the sizable crowd with his quirk and fighting prowess. They knew it was probably Kaminari's quirk at work, and they turned slightly to see the flood zone swell with electricity and screams. As they made their way back to the main area, they noticed Bakugo holding the smoke man down with a metal collar fastened to his smoky form while Ida ran out the door. You may have me, but your sensei looks as though he's on death's door. Our Nomu will be more than happy to show him the way through. The man with the smoke said. Looking toward the center, Izuku saw that Aizawa was now supported by her hair, and that her face and body were covered in bruises and blood. The most likely cause of his injuries was the large black creature holding him, as some of the skin on his right arm crumbled away to the muscle. Izuku went pale when they saw that their teacher might have been killed, but they immediately activated 8% once more and hurried in. With his right fist pumped to maximum force, he ran up to the Nomu and threw a right hook in its face, causing it to release Aizawa. Izuku screamed, let go of him, as his fist struck the monster's face. Izuku saw that the monster had only been pushed back a few steps when the smoke rose and a huge burst of air was released due to the force of the impact. Huh? You thought that would work? Nomu here is maxed out on shock resistance. He was made to be the perfect weapon against All Might. The man with pale blue hair replied. The Nomu raised a fist and threw it at Izuku, who dodged by keeping full cowling at his current percentage. Nomu, attack. Show this low-level noob what it means to mess with us. With little difficulty, he sidestepped 2 more punches and avoided another. Shigaraki ordered, why are you punching so slowly? Crush him. And the blows began to come more quickly until Izuku could only try to block them. They struck his face, chest, and torso, causing deep, purplish-red bruises all over his body. The only reason his arms weren't breaking yet was because One for All was still pulsing through his body, even though they also sustained damage from blocking some of the impacts. Izuku. Momo cried out in terror. After his guard was finally broken, Izuku was hit all over his body because he was unable to dodge or block many blows. After the subsequent round of punches, his skin turned reddish like Aizawa's, and he was in excruciating pain because he was powerless to stop the monster in front of him. The boxer fell out with a heavy thud after the Nomu delivered a final blow to the boy, sending him flying into a stone wall with enough force to create a small crater. The boy coughed up blood, forcing his body to stand while holding his hand in front of him. He came back to the sensation that his body was telling him to stop, to give up, and to let himself be carried away to unconsciousness. But that waning feeling was overpowered by his desire to save his friends, and his body began to glow again. With his body glowing even brighter, Izuku gritted his teeth and said, "You won't hurt my friends." The man exclaimed, "Game over, Nomu, finish him." With the intention of breaking Izuku's neck with the force of the blow, the monster lifted a last punch and directed it at his face. To the leader's confusion, the boxer managed to dodge the deadly blow as it approached his head. Izuku shakily raised his fists to his face and signaled for the monster to approach him with his right hand. As he dodged in an infinity shape, the monster threw another punch that was dodged, and another, and another. Izuku gradually increased the one for all percentage in his body to dangerous levels, making each full rotation even faster than the one before it. Wind started to appear as he spun, and Shigaraki and 1A watched in disbelief as red and green lightning started to shoot out of his body, illuminating the infinite shape he spun in. Izuku swerved to the left before the monster's next blow, towing his right fist for a crushing right hook that exploded in the Nomu's face. Shigaraki Tamura smiled at this, knowing that the boy's blows would be easily absorbed by the Nomu's shock resistance. The combination of One for All's raw power and the momentum pushing through the shock resistance caused the Nomu to actually recoil from the punch, which was unexpected. Izuku then began to growl in rage and followed it up with a left hook before landing another right. He was now using half of his power and was still rolling in his infinity shape with the punches piling up. Enhanced Dempsey roll. One for all. As he kept launching his volley of hooks at the Nomu's face, the boxer pondered. After stopping his roll to veer low, Izuku gave the Nomu a powerful uppercut that sent it flying back into a wall. Shigaraki screamed, "Why, you're cheating? Nothing can harm Nomu." As Izuku collapsed onto one knee, his arms limp at his sides. As nothing happened, the villain used the moment to sprint up to Izuku with a hand poised to tear him to pieces, fingertips touching face. Confused, he withdrew his hand but turned to face Eraserhead's wounded form, who was staring down at him with red glowing eyes. Shigaraki intended to kill the boy who had struck his Nomu by waiting for the man to blink once more. But the door exploded just as he was about to try again. All Might appeared in it, his customary smile replaced by a furious frown. He saw Izuku's figure, his face growing more furious as he became even more incensed at what his successor had to endure at the hands of these evildoers. He saw Shigaraki smile beneath the hand covering his face as the Nomu crept slowly in the direction of the boxer. All Might snarled, "Villains, you will pay for hurting my students." As Shigaraki shouted, "There's the final boss, Nomu, kill him," the Nomu charged the hero. Now that the students were out of the way, the two started to argue. In fearful anticipation, Momo watched the fight, but then she remembered that Izuku was still down there. She exclaimed, "Juru-san, follow me, down there? Why the hell would you do that?" Juru exclaimed as he observed the conflict happening. The girl's perspective shifted when Momo took her by the head and pointed it at Izuku, who was unconscious on the ground. As they reached Izuku, they watched All Might suplex the Nomu, a portal forming beneath it, being careful to keep a safe distance from the battle. As they watched Todoroki freeze the monster's arms that were embedded in All Might's sides, Momo made a stretcher out of her stomach and placed Izuku on it. She and Juru held both ends of the stretcher to carry Izuku back to the others. As they placed Izuku next to 13 and attended to his injuries, they allowed the altercation to continue. After making a roll of bandages, Momo wrapped Izuku in them. A short while later, she did the same for 13. The rest of the class had gathered by then, both worried about Izuku's condition and the battle going on inside the USJ. Izuku opened his eyes and mumbled, what happened?" As he looked to the right, he saw All Might strike the Nomu one last time, causing it to leave the USJ and fly into the clouds. Izuku slowly sat up and realized he was back at the USJ entrance. Additionally, he saw that All Might was speaking to the villains, but he was preoccupied with the smoke, which was a far more pressing concern. As he saw smoke rising from the hero's skin, he recalled a very significant thing that had been mentioned to him some time before. It was 3 months ago. Izuku saw All Might deflate again as he loaded up the last truck of trash for the day. He said, "You doing okay, All Might?" The boxer and the hero were left on the beach while Kato went away for the day to sort out the money from Izuku's sponsorships with the Yaoyorozus and All Might. All Might said, "I'm doing fine, my boy." Izuku removed his gloves and listened, saying, "But there is something I need to tell you. As you know of this true form of mine, I hadn't told you about my limit," he replied. Izuku questioned, "Limit? What limit? I can't maintain my muscle form for more than 3 hours, and I fear that it will only decrease as I continue," the mighty said. That startled Izuku, who turned to his second mentor in worry. "The times I deflated during training was much less focused solely for you, but also me having reached that limit for the day." "Then why give me this power? If you hadn't given it to me you would have had more time to be a hero," Izuku replied. "My boy, it was like that before I gave you my power. However, I gave it to you for this very reason. I may be weakening, but you will surpass me as my successor. I know for sure that by the time I retire, you will be there to be an even stronger symbol of peace than I ever could be," the mighty said. As they completed their training for the day, Izuku gazed at him with a mixture of fear and wonder. Presently, as the smoke from his mentor's body continued to rise, the boy was having difficulty staying seated. He saw the man covered in hands and made of smoke reach for the number 1 hero at the same moment, but he was stopped by a bullet that entered his own hand. Looking to his right, Izuku saw Iida standing victorious next to the UA staff after noticing All Might wrapped in a cement box. "Fear not, friends. Help has arrived." The heroes entered to help the students and apprehend any unconscious villains, while the conscious villains began to withdraw into the portal. Cementos and Blood King carried Izuku back to campus, lifting him in the stretcher Momo had made for him. He kept thinking about the expression on Momo's face as she walked beside him, her eyes filled with tears and fearful worry. Later, infirmary. After Recovery Girl completed the task Momo and Jiro had begun, Izuku lay on one of the hospital beds with his body wrapped in bandages. He couldn't stop thinking about Momo's face as he was being carried out, so he remained awake. Before he heard the door of the infirmary open, he thought to himself, I didn't want to die, but I didn't want her and the others to die before the heroes appeared. I just want to keep her safe. Keep them safe. What's happening to me? He turned to watch Momo come into the room, her eyes red as she hurried over to him. Momo. Izuku. Do you know what you could have done? You could have died. Did you even care when you charged that monster? She screamed. What about your dream of being a hero? Of being a champion, of saving your mother? She screamed. He exclaimed, Momo, what are you going on about? She began to cry even more, and Izuku could see the feelings she had been suppressing ever since he had gone to battle the Nomu. I'm going on about how you almost threw your life away fighting that thing, she exclaimed. She was upset that he had nearly killed himself to save them and that she was powerless to assist him further at that time. She put her hands on his shoulders and started to cry as he watched her approach even closer. The woman buried herself in his chest and cried, I don't want to lose you, Izuku. You're one of the first males I've been acquainted with who saw me for more than just my money or my body. Please, don't let me lose you. Momo, I'm sorry I made you worry so hard. I'll do my best to make sure you won't have to feel this way again. Is there any possible way I can make it up to you? He asked as she turned to face him. With her face burning red in response to his perplexity, she said, if you want to make it up to me, then please, let me give you something. I'd rather you take it than someone else. Please, Izuku. Before noticing two things that had changed, he asked, what is it? His lap held Momo, and her lips. They were on his. He was being kissed by her. Izuku pushed her body closer to his, yelling into her mouth, MMMMPH, as the sensation of her lips on his remained constant. While they were on the hospital bed, she put her arms around his shoulders and pressed herself against his. Izuku was still in shock that his best friend was suddenly making out with him, and his eyes were wide open. He finally gave in to what was happening and began kissing her back, his hands finally finding their way to her sides and planting themselves there. For the next few minutes, the two kept kissing, Momo digging her hands into his hair and only ceasing when they were out of breath. Despite carrying out this act and being fully aware of the consequences, neither Momo nor Izuku felt love. Momo's desire for Izuku to remain in her life was the driving force behind the impulsive action. For Izuku, it was just caving into her will, with a glimmer of curiosity about how her line of reasoning resulted in this being her strategy. But now he just allowed himself to be with her. A trail of saliva showed between their mouths as the two parted, panting and out of breath. That was my first kiss. I want to give you my other first as well, Izuku, Momo replied. Momo, hold on, isn't this a bit too quick? I mean, he attempted to say. I don't know, Izuku. I don't want you to disappear. You're the only one I trust this much. Please. Let me give you this, so maybe you won't end up missing from my life, she said, her tears pooling on his chest. He moved to embrace her and said, Momo. In an attempt to talk her out of potentially making a big mistake, he said, you don't have to push yourself. I'm not going anywhere, so don't worry about me. I'm fine. You're my best friend, and nothing will change that. I know, but I still want you to have this. I'd rather you take it than anyone else. Please, Izuku. Momo replied. I'll take it, if you trust me with it, Izuku replied. She cried once more, but it was a joyful tear. She jumped in to give him another kiss and said, thank you, Izuku. He returned his hands to her firm but gentle sides and they kissed again, and he allowed himself to be carried away into the mood once more. Momo reached down to his shorts with his hands. As her hands moved down his chest and down his abs and settled on the hem of his shorts, he moaned softly. She simultaneously moved the lower portion of her costume to the side beneath her skirt with one hand, leaving it exposed to the air but concealed from Izuku by the skirt. At the same moment, she lowered the shorts and the boxers underneath, exposing a tower of flesh that she was unable to take her eyes off. Given that the last kiss had pushed his little hero into overdrive, Izuku's face burned with rage at being forced to show his best friend his lower self. He sensed her rising, concealing one of her hands and his small companion beneath her skirt. 1 second he felt a hand grab him, and then he was blank. A moment later, he felt a tight, trembling sensation all around his member as he was welcomed back into reality. He heard a moan as well, and when he looked up, He saw Momo sitting on top of him, her eyes closed and teary. He started to ask her why she was crying, but then he recalled the precise reason and the emotion came back to him. Izuku became aware that he was having sex with his best friend at that precise moment. He had never thought he would experience anything like this at this point in his life, nor had he ever imagined it. He watched as Momo opened her eyes and gazed into his own, her face as red as it could get. As he began to breathe more deeply, she said, I'm going to start moving. As she started to bounce on his lap, his entire body just caught up to his thoughts and was tinged with pleasure. He reached for whatever was nearest, finally grabbing Momo's sides as she held onto the hospital bed's linens. As she rode him, the girl groaned loudly and often, and Izuku grunted with her as her walls consumed his member. Their time was running out, so even though it had only taken 30 minutes, it had felt like forever in heaven to the two of them. Izuku shouted, Momo, I grunt feel something coming. She groaned, I'm close T2. On, T together. The girl screamed and moaned as her walls squeezed and milked him for more of that essence, and Izuku felt himself release the essence of new life into her in just a few more moments. After a few moments, she pulled away from him and lay down on him in a weary heap. Before she went to sleep, he noticed that her eyes were filled with caution, fear, and a mixture of something more profound. The third thing was probably what had brought her here, but he had no idea what it was. But while she was sleeping, Izuku had a more important question. His heart aflutter and his head spinning, he turned back to her and asked, if Momo was willing to have such a thing as sex with me, then what are we? The boxer was prepared for the trials ahead, but there was a difference between being physically and emotionally prepared. I just hope nothing goes wrong between us after this. Right then, he had to work out the new wave of feelings he was experiencing for Yaoyorozu Momo, the person on his chest. Later that night, Izuku got up after Momo and walked home alone to take in the situation, while Momo fled home as soon as she woke up. When we arrive at the USJ to train, villains attack. I almost died trying to stop a Nomu, or whatever that thing was called, from harming anyone but me. We are saved by All Might, and I have sex with Momo. Intercourse. When he recalled the memory and realized how wonderful it felt, his face turned red. With Momo. He made an effort to stop thinking about those things, but all he could think about was her. She had a gorgeous complexion and dark eyes, and he recalled how she squeezed him when he stopped, blushed wildly, and realized he was already home. Too dazed and bruised to train for the day, he went in and collapsed backward onto his bed. The biggest challenge at the moment was his confusion, but the injuries weren't a concern because they would go away with time. What am I thinking of Momo? Izuku pondered. On the one hand, I'm happy that we're friends. I didn't give it much thought because I liked what we had. However, there is a part of me that still longs for something more. However, I'm not sure which path I want to take. Izuku took out his phone and called his mentor, saying, I need help. After a few moments of ringing, Kato's voice could be heard on the other end of the line. With a hint of panic, Kato said, Kid, I heard what happened at the USJ. Are you alright? I'm fine. The injuries are expected to be gone tomorrow thanks to Recovery Girl being an amazing healer, he stated. There's a different reason I called though. Kato inquired, what is it? I have some, G-girl problems to talk about, Izuku replied. Really? Never knew you had it in you, kid. What are the problems about? He inquired. Izuku stammered, well, earlier, I had, Kato said, spit it out, kid. He said, I had sex with a girl. Which caused Kato to stop. Again, I never really thought you had it in ya, kid. Good on you. What's the problem? He inquired. The problem is that she's been my best friend ever since the first sponsorship deal, Izuku replied. It's just, my heart tightens up thinking of her. I don't want to mess up what we have, but at the same time I think I want to be more than friends. What do I do? He inquired. Kato answered, kid. I have no answer for you. Problems of the heart are different than issues in the ring. You can't punch through your feelings. All I can say is that you need to take care of this issue however you see fit. He said, and then suddenly cracked a grin. Hey kid. I have another question for you. Izuku inquired, what is it? With the biggest teasing smile, Kato asked, you use protection? As he fumbled with the phone in his hands, Izuku's face turned red. Izuku shouted, KK Kato-sensei. While Kato laughed across the phone, Izuku said, that's not funny. I need to make another call, so bye, once his blush subsided. I'll take that as a no, but see me at the gym in 2 days. We need to discuss your next fight, Kato responded. Izuku hung up and looked for another number, calling as a different voice answered, saying, "Okay then, bye." Kirishima said, "Hey bro. What's hanging?" Izuku said, "Kirishima-kun. Hi, I need some advice." "What's the matter bro?" the boy with the red hair asked. "It's a girl problem. A second opinion is really all I need," he replied. In response, Kirishima said, "Lay it on me bro. Would it be bad if I wanted to date my closest friend?" Izuku inquired. "If this is about Yaoyorozu-san, then no not at all," he said. "Actually, I thought you two were seating already." "And no, we aren't. I just don't know how to go up to her and ask her out. What if she says no? What if I screw things up?" he said in a state of panic. Kirishima exclaimed, Whoa, calm down bro. I'm sure she'll say yes if you ask her out. Besides, you can still be friends if she says no, it never hurts to try." "Thanks, Kirishima-kun. I appreciate the help," Izuku replied. Excited, he exclaimed, "Anytime. Now, be a man and go get her." Izuku ended the call by saying, "I'll try. Bye." After setting his phone aside, he lay down on his bed. Izuku's face lit up as he said, "That wouldn't be too difficult, if only I could stop thinking of her for 10 seconds. He then fell asleep, unable to shake the girl with the black ponytail from his thoughts. In the interim, Yaoyorozu Manor. Momo was sitting on her bed right now, swallowing a pill while sporting a noticeable flush. Momo put down the box of birth control pills her mother had given her at the beginning of the year and thought to herself, "I never thought these would come to use." With a sigh, the girl collapsed on her bed. Then she took her phone off the charger beside her pillow and looked through her contacts. Red in the face from the act they had committed earlier that day, she headed to Izuku's number. She continued to scroll down until she found a number, dialed, and hoped to get some guidance. While lying on her bed and using her phone, Mina Ishido's voice said, "Hello?" Momo said, "Mina-chan, I need your help." "With what?" asked Mina. "Well, it's a problem pertaining to Izuku," Momo replied. Mina said, "Wait, what happened?" "Just to clarify, it's not something he did," Momo replied. "It's more my fault this happened." Mina said in a frustrated voice, "I'm still very lost and confused. What did you do?" "I may have done something with Izuku," Momo replied. "Something of the sexual sorts." Mina questioned, You had sex with Midoriya-kun? That was fast?" Momo called out into the phone, Mina-chan, this is serious." Alright. So you did the deed with Midoriya. Wouldn't that be a good thing for you?" replied Mina. Then she grinned. "Was it good?" Momo answered, It was pleasurable," she exclaimed. But that's not the issue. I'm scared that our current relationship will be awkward when we see each other again." "Then don't make it awkward. You two can still talk to each other like reasonable hormonal teenagers. You can work out what you are now with him. Besides, if it works out in the end, it might be good for you. In more ways than one." Mina laughed. "That seems better than my initial thoughts. Thank you for the advice, Mina-chan," Momo replied. As the call came to an end, Mina said, "No problem girl. I'm always here to help." Momo sighed and then failed to stop thinking about Izuku while she slept, asking herself, "But how can I do that if I can't even keep myself together anymore?" In class the following day. After settling into the room, the class was greeted by Aizawa, who was wrapped in bandages. Kirishima questioned, "Shouldn't you still be in the hospital?" Aizawa declared, "My injuries won't stop me from teaching. Also, the sports festival will be taking place in 2 weeks." Kaminari questioned, "Even though we just were attacked by villains? The school is upping security this year. We need to show the people of Japan that we are still standing strong despite the invasion of the USJ. At least, that's why Nezu decided that the sports festival is still being held," explained Aizawa. "After today you will have the next 2 weeks for training. Use this time wisely." Mineta questioned, "What's the sports festival anyways?" Izuku remarked, "You're unaware of the sports festival? It's UA's yearly festival where students have the opportunity to be scouted out by professional heroes." Izuku exclaimed with delight. Before he could respond, he remembered the previous dia including his dreams from the previous night and blushed, turning around again as he saw Momo make eye contact with him. "Everyone knows of the sports festival. It's one of Japan's biggest events," said Kirishima. Mina joked, "I wonder if you're going to have any special role, Boxer-kun." Izuku exclaimed, "I'm not sure, but I want to train as hard as possible before the festival starts," in an enthusiastic tone. Now that that's settled, today's lesson is about lunch. Izuku was spotted sitting with his new pals in the cafeteria. He and Momo made an effort to speak, but their memories of unplanned sex made them blush too much to have meaningful conversations. The friends gave the two a worried glance, but they dismissed it because they believed that they would reconcile in due time. Juru excluded. What's going on? Why aren't those two talking with each other anymore? Juru inquired. Knowing that the other was aware of the pairs, Kirishima and Mina exchanged glances. Action, and faced Juru. Kirishima said, I'll tell you later. Juru remarked, but what's with them? It seems important. The girl with the earphone jack sighed and Mina said, later. The two now awkward teenagers were too preoccupied with stumbling around in shame to communicate effectively with one another. The bell announcing the next class rang through the packed lunchroom just as Momo opened her mouth to try to speak, making it impossible for the two of them to work out their differences. After class, Izuku began walking to his next class, but he stopped when he reached the door. There was a group of other students obstructing the class, with a lavender-haired student at the front, conversing with Bakugo. As the boy grinned, Bakugo snarled, what the hell do you want? So this is the famous Class 1A? Seems like you're just a bunch of monkeys, the kid replied. Again. What the hell do you want? All I want is to see the competition this year. They say if the teachers are impressed enough they'll up students in general ed into the hero course. I'm making a declaration of war with you, 1A. I will make my way to the hero course, even if I have to kick your explosive ass to do it. Shinso Hitoshi, the boy, said. Bakugo snarled and was ready to leap at him, but Izuku was in the middle, wearing his gloves, as one glove passed in front of each boy's chest. Izuku told Bakugo, stop fighting. We're not going to cause a scene, okay? Bakugo retreated and grudgingly cursed at the boy. He addressed the boy with the lavender hair, saying, and you? The boy grinned a little and walked away, taking the other general education students with him. We're not all like him. Please don't base your assumptions off of one of us. If you want to prove yourself during the sports festival, wait until then and I'll be sure to give you the challenge necessary to join the hero course. After school. After that, the remainder of the day went pretty normally, with Izuku leaving as soon as school let out to talk to both of his mentors about some crucial issues. Izuku walked into All Might's office and saw the slender figure sitting on a chair. Beside him, Kato was using his phone to search for additional gym equipment. All Might remarked, ah, young Midoriya, nice of you to arrive. Izuku inquired, what did you call me for? It's a manner of me letting you know of two things. First is the upcoming festival. I want you to go out there my boy and tell the world that you are here. In a sense this could be your big debut as the next symbol of peace. He was told by All Might. Izuku opened his mouth to reply, but his teacher cut him off. All Might then told Izuku a story about two brothers. One who had the ability to take quirks, and his rebellious brother in his line of descendants, who had the ability to give quirks to others. I also must tell you more of my legacy. The legacy of One for All. He clarified that, including himself, 8 generations had battled against this dark symbol. I have something else I need to explain to you my boy. My time as the symbol of peace is coming to an end, the mighty said. What? Cried Izuku. Yeah. The big guy's limit got cut after going above his full power during the USJ. Japan may not know it, but the time of All Might as Japan's defender is ending. Yes. It pains me to tell you, but I can no longer go more than 2 hours without my muscle form collapsing. That is why I need you not only to tell the world that you are an upcoming protector of Japan, but also the next symbol of peace. Izuku gained All Might's and Kato's confusion by saying, I don't think I can do that. It's not that I don't want to, but I have so much more I need to do first. I want to at least gain the featherweight belt before anything else. It may seem selfish of me to put my own goals above the necessity for a new symbol of peace, but I want to assure myself with that victory that I have the strength to tell the world that I'm worthy of being their next protector. Izuku said with a nod. He answered, that's perfectly fine, young Midoriya. I won't force you to do so. I just wanted to throw the option out there. Izuku stated, I'll take it into consideration, thanks for letting me know. Eventually. Kato exclaimed, hey, kid, you made it, as Izuku emerged through the gym's now empty doors. Izuku said, hey sensei, what was this about the fight? The coach clarified, well, it's an exhibition match. Actually, it's more special than that. To which Izuku replied, what do you mean? Well, you get to skip the first event in the sports festival because your fight is the opening battle for the sports festival, he replied. I'm what? Exclaimed Izuku. That's right kid. Your opponent is actually of a slightly higher weight class, but the fight organizers have not told me who it is you're going to fight. Kato replied. All they said was that he's in a higher weight class. You never really have info on the fighters themselves, huh? Izuku responded. It's the only way I'm able to squeeze more cash from the higher ups, kid. You know less about the fighter, the less they spend building pre-fight hype, and the more that unspent money goes into your mom's medical fund. He continued. The 2 sponsorships are only added on to that. I'd love to tell you all about your opponent, but I'm not informed about them until the day before the fight itself. Revealed Kato. It's fine, sensei. I appreciate the help towards mom's hospital fund, replied Izuku. Great. Now, I have to teach you some new things, kid. Step in the ring. Kato replied. Izuku saw his figure wearing black sweatpants and a blue track jacket as the mentor put on a pair of gloves. Now kid, I only realized this now, but we need to improve upon your current fighting style. And why's that? Queried Izuku. You're going to be both a pro hero and a boxer. Your fights can and will be studied by your future enemies and opponents to use against you, so I need you to adapt in the event of that actually happening. Kato replied. Now, I'm going to start throwing fists, and all you need to do is dodge. You hear me? Izuku tapped his mentor's gloves and exclaimed, Got it. Izuku took a moment to concentrate on the flying fists as Kato started to poke fun at the boy. For the next 5 minutes, he dodged, until Kato paused to catch his breath. Good work, kid. Now comes the lesson. Continue to dodge, but stop focusing on my hands. But, how will I be able to dodge if I can't focus on your fist? Izuku inquired. Then focus on your opponent. Your opponent will have strategies of their own that you will not know. What you can do is study how they moved before, and predict how they will move next. This tactic is especially helpful when your opponent is angry, as they will default to those moves out of pure instinct. Let's try it. Remember the pattern I jabbed at you with? Only think of that, and don't look at my hands. Kato began to jab Izuku and he began to dodge and recalled the previous pattern. He was struck by some blows, but instead of paying attention to the gloves, he was learning how to move instinctively to avoid more blows. He noticed a change from before as he closely watched Kato's movements and the twists of his body as he delivered the blows that were not supposed to land. He saw Kato's body change into an uppercut, which Izuku was able to avoid, and threw a left hook, which he stopped a centimeter from Kato's face where a left jab was supposed to come next. The mentor then laughed as Izuku retreated. How did I do? Inquired Izuku. You did good, kid. Now, we need continue to practice that and more. I need to drill in as many boxing techniques into you as possible, so you're not just stuck with one form of boxing. Such as, you're currently a swarmer-style boxer. You try not to let your opponents get in a good hit by rushing up close, and if they ever try to swing at you, you always tend to dodge their blows by pushing into their guard. I need you to learn more so that you'll be able to make a fighting style that can topple any opponent, whether that be villain or boxer. Kato clarified. Izuku said, I understand, but how can I learn that? Don't worry, kid. I'll teach you each one at a time. I won't start teaching you other styles of boxing until I see you're able to master the one I teach. We'll start with slugging, and after that, I'll teach you the slugger's counter style. Outboxer. But that won't be until after you learn slugging, which in theory is the counter to your style. Now, slugging is. Kato started explaining and Izuku caught every word that his instructor wrote in his notebook. The following day. When Izuku awoke the following morning, he recalled the lessons his teacher had taught him. With a pencil serving as a bookmark, he opened his notebook to the page and noticed a few items. Outboxing was defined first, and then the style was analyzed by him. A fighter that practices the slugger style, also called the brawler, is solely a heavy puncher. In return for a more rooted position and far more powerful punches, footwork and speed are sacrificed. Advantages. Very powerful blows to make up for slow speed. The brawler can withstand a lot of hits without worrying about being knocked down thanks to training that emphasizes strengthening the chin and upper body. Punches have amazing strength and can quickly take out opponents, making them devastating. Very effective against swarmers, as the distance allows for the easy delivery of strong blows. Weaknesses. The brawler's low speed makes it easy to hit, and a faster opponent can easily avoid slower but more potent blows. Guard is weakened so they can deliver their own blows and tank others. Because they are out of the slugger's range, outboxers are at an advantage and can take hits from a distance without being able to retaliate. Advice on how to use this style. Aim for as many hard hits as you can while concentrating on counters. Only use the slugger style when it's absolutely necessary, countering swarmers, near knockout. If the opponent is an outboxer, switch to swarmer style right away because brawlers can't get inside the outboxer's gap. Avoid attempting KO. This type of punch has the potential to kill the opponent. One for all usage, regardless of the amount, is likely to result in long-term harm. Advice for avoiding this style: as soon as you learn about this, adopt an outboxer stance. Avoid entering their area of activity. To take advantage of slow speed, concentrate on accuracy and speed when using blows and footwork. Slugger has a greater chance of winning over time, so build it up gradually rather than aiming for an instant knockout. KO. They must be weakened before using punches and Dempsey rolls, as their retaliatory blows could cause them to lose. After reviewing the notes he had previously taken, Izuku closed his notebook and hopped in the shower to prepare for the day. Even though it was the weekend, he made the decision to put the new knowledge to the test when he went out to begin training for his upcoming fight in the sports festival. In the interim, Todoroki Manor. Face to face with the number 2 hero and his father, Endeavor, Todoroki Shoto said, "I refuse." "Shoto, this will be beneficial for the future of this family," said Endeavor. With a slight growl in his throat, Todoroki declared, "I'm not going to be sold away in some quirk marriage just because you want an even stronger grandchild. I may put up with your hellish training, but I will be able to choose who I am to marry. Then I will strike a deal with you, Shoto. If you are not going to accept the options I have placed, then you will find your own as you so desire." The second hero replied. While frowning, the red and white-haired teen finally accepted the arrangement. "You are to find a suitable bride by the end of the sports festival. If you do not, I will make the choice for you." By moving in with whoever he wants, he would at least be able to get away from his father. Examining a list of his classmates, he evaluated each one. "Ochako Uraraka won't be suitable as our personalities are too different for a suitable long-term marriage. The same rule applies for Mina Ishido and Toru Hagakuri, if not also because they annoy me. Kyoka Jiru won't survive father's strong quirk requirements, and I have no desire to pursue Asui Suyu." He was thinking to himself. He thought about Momo Yaoyorozu after looking at the last image. "We have sufficiently similar personalities. She is also quite nice to other people and has a strong quirk that her father will like. I'm sorry, Yaoyorozu, but I've decided. I need you to marry me and help me get out of my father's clutches," Todoroki thought. "I'll have you by the end of the sports festival." After 2 weeks, the class worked hard over the next 2 weeks to prepare for the event. Since the slugger style mostly consists of hitting harder and strengthening his upper body, Izuku picked it up rather quickly. In order to counter the new style he had just learned, he began learning outboxing at the same time. Though not as intensely as Izuku, the other students in the class also trained. He would begin each day by running 1 kilometer around Musutafu before heading to the gym to practice brawling with Kato. In order to avoid being stuck with a slugger physique when he switched to a different style, Izuku would spend time strengthening his body's muscles during that time. He would slug at a bag for the next hour until his arms hurt from all the punching. He began learning the basics of outboxing in the final days of the second week. To ensure that Izuku learned outboxing from more than just lectures, Kato would force him to spar with him while he was employing the slugger style. Through painful experience, Izuku discovered that outboxers substituted much faster footwork for the slugger's powerful blows, keeping the opponent at a distance and gradually wearing them down instead of charging in to land a barrage of blows. The first day of the sports festival arrived at the end of the 2 weeks, and 1A was waiting to be announced to the crowd in a large room. Izuku was there, putting Momo's personalized boxing tape on his hands and turning on the gloves to make sure they were still working. He got to his feet as he watched his classmates gather and mentally get ready, and one of them approached him out of the blue. Izuku said, "Hey there Todoroki-kun. Midoriya. I'm not here for niceties. I'm here to say that I believe that I am stronger out of the 2 of us. I will beat you in this tournament," he said with a grin on his face. Izuku held out a friendly hand and said, "If that's the case then I'll make it my goal to prove you wrong." Ignoring it, Todoroki turned to leave, but not before taking one last step. To Izuku's bewilderment and mild ire, he added, "Oh, and one more thing. I don't know what happened between you two, but Yaoyorozu-san will be mine, so back away from her." When their 2 teachers appeared on the screen leading to their lobby, he was too busy to question it. Present Mike and Mummy Aizawa were shown on the large screen outside. Present Mike shouted over the speakers, "Welcome to this year's annual UA Sports Festival." As both fans and sports heroes applauded. As one set of gates with the classroom number opened, he exclaimed, "We have a powerful cast of students this year, each and every class ready to give it their all." Starting us out, Give it up for Class 1A. It gave rise to a group of UA students. One figure is in a training uniform, his freckled face covered by a hood. A stage and podium were set up in the middle, and the remaining classes were gathered there after being announced in alphabetical order. Present Mike exclaimed, "Now, we'll have the top scorer of the entrance exams deliver a speech. Step right up, kid." Despite being expressly instructed not to reveal his identity, the boy wearing a UA version of a zip-up hoodie. He stepped up to the podium wearing a training uniform and white tape covering his hands. "Today we are here to show the pro heroes that we have what it takes to be the next generation of protectors. Through this tournament, UA tells them that their students have the strength to bring peace to Japan and protect its citizens from all manners of villainy. Through this tournament, we tell them that we are here. All I want to inform this crowd is that I will do my best to not only become a hero to stand with my peers, but also to be the greatest boxer I can be." He took off his hoodie to show off his black tank top and his trademark green hair, making the crowd stare in disbelief. As he left the stage, students and the audience cheered. "I am Izuku Midoriya, hero in training and professional boxer, and I will do my best to not only become one of the greatest heroes, but help those with me become the same as well. Thank you," Izuku said. Present Mike shouted, "Now that the speech is over, what better way to start the sports festival than with an exhibition match?" A crew entered to remove the stage while Cementos constructed a cement boxing ring, setting the ropes and pads on each post. Kato arrived from the 1A door to meet Izuku at the ring as the crew proceeded to surround it with items to give the impression that it was an official match. "An opponent has arrived, but one of the fighters has already made their announcement," Aizawa remarked. "It seems he's a legend in the upper tournaments." Izuku and Kato were shocked to see a figure with a black afro emerge, followed by an older man and a young boy. The man was wearing orange pants and red gloves. "Give it up for his other Quirkless Joe, everyone," Present Mike said. The tan-skinned man entered the ring and grinned at the boy in a friendly, competitive manner. The green-haired boxer smiled back, but he was also nervously excited because the man was one of his own inspirations for boxing. After putting on their mouthguards, the two approached the center of the ring, where Joe's smile grew. "Kid, want to get something after this?" the man remarked. "You seem like a fun guy to be around. I'll accept that offer from you. I've wanted to meet you for ages." As the gloves touched, Izuku answered. Round 1. Attack. Play Megalo Box's main theme. Izuku immediately veered to the left to avoid Joe's right cross at the beginning of the game, and the taller man immediately blocked his left hook. After dodging another blow, the boy struck Joe in the face with a left cross. The man took a step backwards and ducked under the next blow before hitting Izuku with his own. 2 punches were aimed at the boy's head, but he retreated and blocked them, hooking the opponent in the jaw. Joe rushed in to attempt a right cross as Izuku shifted to the slugger style. Izuku's entire weight was behind the taller man's right hook, which stunned him enough to warrant a follow-up. Izuku's favorite move, the right uppercut, finishes after a liver blow and gut punch. Joe instantly fell to the mat after this series of blows utilizing the slugger style's unadulterated strength. Present Mike shouted, "Only 20 seconds in and one of them is already down." As the crows in the middle of the arena applauded the two boxers, Joe got up instantly and grinned. He and Izuku inhaled deeply, caught their breath, and then went on. Izuku retaliated by wailing on Joe's body with a barrage of body blows until he was compelled to release him after Joe rushed towards the boy and locked him in a clinch. Joe snapped his head to the right after Izuku's punch, but he turned back just in time to avoid a left and land 2 jabs at Izuku's face, connecting the two fighters' blows. As soon as they were back on their feet, they exchanged jabs that struck each other's gloved hands. Joe took 2 steps back, avoiding 3 jabs and a left hook before Izuku's rush forward was met by his fist. In order to give himself some breathing room, Izuku hopped in place, then slipped under a right hook and moved behind the opponent using the out-boxer-style speed. As his younger opponent moved in circles around him, occasionally landing powerful blows to wear him down, Joe turned around with a hook that Izuku ducked and responded with a blow to the liver. Izuku was on the verge of landing another knockdown when the arena echoed with the sharp ring of the bell. To get ready for the next round, the two paused and went back to their corners. Kato remarked, "You're doing pretty well out there, kid." Izuku remarked, "Maybe, but the rounds feel a lot shorter." "Yeah. To keep the focus on the festival itself, the match is only 3 rounds, 2 minutes per round," Kato replied. 2 minutes, what? It seemed like 20 seconds, Izuku cried out. "It's true, but you're fighting, which is why. A clock is in place for the rounds. You don't." The mentor said, "Now concentrate on your opponent and keep in mind what I taught you." As the bell rang once more to signal the beginning of the next round, Izuku said, "I got it." The boy got up and walked to the middle of the ring to bump gloves with Joe, grinning as they returned to their respective stances. "All set. Part 2, attack," Present Mike shouted as the bell rang, and the two fought again. Joe ducked down after avoiding 2 jabs, but Izuku jumped for a jolt haymaker, sailing above him to land behind the Quirkless boxer. Joe slammed his glove into Izuku's jaw, making him spin in a circle before narrowly avoiding a right straight from the tan opponent. The younger fighter stepped back and waited, scanning Joe's form to see what the young fighter would do next, but he saw that Joe was doing the same, so he hurried him. What he didn't know was that instead of taking the blow, the boy swerved left last second and landed a left hook on him that caused him to take a few steps back. Izuku rushed in again, intent on knocking him down, but was met with a fist to the gut, then to the face as his moves were read by the Quirkless Joe. A right cross sent Izuku sprawling to the mat, the boy hopping up before Present Mike could even announce he was down, and rushed Joe once more. He dodged a left, sidestepped past a right, and ducked under a left hook, uppercutting the man like the last round. Joe slipped away from the hit and used Izuku's position to slug at his face, the boy taking 2 before backing away. Joe charged with a left hook as Izuku did with a right hook, the 2 hits landing on each other's faces in a cross counter. The force of the 2 fighters' punches colliding sent each other sprawling down to the mat. Both were able to stand, and Izuku started to weave left and right, weaving through Joe's punches as one could hear the faint sound of a jet engine as he spun. Joe's eyes followed the boy as he moved to an all too familiar shape. Left, right, the boy moved, Joe aiming to deliver a counter punch as soon as the boy threw the first punch of the famous move. Izuku then flashed out of existence for a quick second with a flash of lightning, startling Joe, until he appeared to the man's left already throwing the punch. The boxer was moving his arms to put his hands up before feeling the fist connect with his face, as the boy after landing the blow continued to weave in front of the man as he delivered one hook, then another, and another, the continuous punches making contact again and again as Joe fell victim to the Dempsey roll. Izuku ended the combo of hooks by weaving low, aiming to deliver an uppercut boosted with his momentum, but that move was dodged by Joe. The older boxer responded by landing a right cross that made Izuku stagger, then a punch to the gut to double him over before launching an uppercut of his own that was aimed to knock him down until the bell rang at the last second, the glove an inch from Izuku's face. Round 2 is over. An excellent fight, Present Mike shouted, and the two went back to their corners. The mentor sprayed water into Izuku's mouth and cleaned a few cuts on his face, while Izuku spat a little blood into a bucket Kato gave him. "Kid, you still have this. This is something you can accomplish. Simply outread him if he's reading you. It's not about reading him to avoid it or hitting him. Sending a message is the goal," Kato stated. Yes. Izuku, panting, said, "I can do that, however confusing that is." He then walked back up to the center, where Joe was waiting, and the two of them grinned at one another. Joe teased, "I'll get you this time, kid." "Not until I knock you down," Izuku replied, his smile widening, and as he extended a glove, Joe tapped it with his own, preparing to start the last round. The last round, everyone, attack. Izuku slugged him across the face before Joe hit him with one. The tan boxer punched Izuku twice in the gut and once in the face, pushing him into the ropes where he delivered another punch to the boy that caused the ropes to stretch. From his position, the boy wound up a fist, using the ropes as a slingshot as he was launched forward, delivering a punch to Joe that caused the man to rocket backwards from the impact into a corner. Izuku sped towards him as Joe held his hands up to block the incoming barrage of punches that were thrown into his guard. Joe's guard was kept up, so Izuku purposely slowed down to give him the impression that he had the upper hand. It seemed as though the older man fell for it, and Izuku caught it by seeing his feet shift slightly. Joe will try to counter the next punch with a dodge to the left and retaliate with a right hook in 3, 2, 1, now. Izuku predicted, ducking down as the previously predicted hook was thrown, the boy cheering slightly in his head as he pressed on. Joe's eyes widened as he barely managed to dodge another uppercut, and Izuku backed away after throwing the punch to recover. The younger boxer then shot towards him, slugging him across the face with a right hook, followed by a left, with Joe dodging the incoming straight. The opponent then delivered 2 jabs to the face, and Izuku stepped back and spat some more blood onto the floor, putting his gloves up with a smile. From there, he dodged a right hook, a left straight, and a brief burst of jabs, landing 2 hooks of his own and yet another uppercut. Midnight, who was watching from the corner of the younger fighter, told Kato, "That seems to be a favorite punch of his." It's true. Despite being easily seen through, he finds it very easy to deliver uppercuts because he is shorter than most of his opponents. But when it lands, Kato replied, "I feel bad that his opponents have to take it when he's in gloves because the kid's able to hit even harder than normal with them on." Izuku was seen weaving under a punch and throwing a right to Joe's body, breaking his guard as a left was thrown immediately after. Joe stumbled back, both fighters now panting, and Izuku thought similarly, winding up to deliver a counter to the round finisher, as the two started to charge. The stadium was silent as the punches made their way to each other, hoping for either a spectacular knockout or an even better cross-counter finish. Kato then rang the bell. Time. Joe and Izuku immediately stopped punching each other, and Aizawa declared, "The match is over." "Hold on. Really?" Joe inquired. "Won't even allow us to finish?" Izuku said, turning to face the announcer box and walking away from Joe with a look of obvious disappointment on his face. "No, the rest of the sports festival must go on, so it would be a pointless waste of time," Aizawa's form stated on the large screen. "Come on, Eraserhead. Let the two have their anticipated and dramatic cross-counter finish, which will end in a tie but will still be fantastic," Present Mike said. "No, once more. It's a draw. Prepare the stage for the upcoming event now. This isn't a boxing match, it's the UA Sports Festival." As a side note, Izuku Midoriya's boxing gloves have been accepted by the principal for the sports festival as support equipment, since it lessens the damage on his hands when he uses his quirk. Aizawa concluded as Izuku, Kato, Joe, and the other two with him left the ring as it was dismantled. The fighters would rest while the first event began before the second event, where Izuku would return. Medical. Recovery Girl was able to treat their wounds and provide them with rest while Izuku and Joe sat on two different beds in the infirmary. "That was a good match, Izuku Midoriya," Joe replied. "To be honest with you, this has been the most fun I've had in a long while." Izuku replied, "I feel the same way, even though it ended a lot faster than I would have liked." Joe then noticed the boy's eyes and noticed that he looked tired. This tiredness seemed to go beyond just his physical appearance, though Joe felt that it wasn't his place to pry. His eyes looked alive again in less than a second, and his demeanor quickly returned to his exuberant self prior to the fight. "By the way, can I get your autograph?" He held out a notebook that he had apparently pulled out of thin air and asked. "I see a bright future for you," Joe said, signing the paper with a faint laugh. "Sure, kid. If you continue to get better, I have no doubt that you will be able to defeat the champion at this pace. Go forward, Midoriya-kun." The boy's smile threatened to outshine the sun itself as he said, "Keep going." "Yes, I will. Don't be concerned about me." Izuku clenched his fists in anticipation as he spoke. In 5 minutes, the next event will start. As the boy put on his UA tracksuit, Aizawa's voice echoed over the infirmary's intercom system. "Will Izuku Midoriya return to the stage?" "I suppose I'm awake." "Joe-kun, I'll see you soon." Izuku hurried to the field and said. As two figures entered, Joe sighed and lay down. Joe called out to the man who came in and the child, "Hey Sakio, hey Gramps. You know, during that fight, the kid only used quirk once. Do you believe he was being forgiving of you?" Nanbu inquired. "I don't think so." Joe responded, "If he was holding back, I would know it. It's the only way the child knows how to fight, in my opinion. I don't think he would fight even if he could use his quirk. His goal is to demonstrate to the world that he can climb without the use of it, not out of conceit. Makes the trip more satisfying," Joe remarked. "I kind of like you," Sakio remarked, however, without the entire quirk component. "All right, child. He and you will undoubtedly achieve great things in life." Previously, after the match, Momo found herself exhaling. After the area was cleared, Midnight led them to a large room where students were beginning to stream in, while Momo was deep in thought, remembering what had transpired 2 weeks prior. "Momo, what have you done?" She thought to herself, "Izuku is training every day to get better while you're designating yourself to just be there for the ride. On top of that, I even chose to give him my purity. Why did I do that?" Momo entered the crowd, trying to think of ways to defend her actions, saying, I just didn't want him to leave. Was that so much to ask for? But that's a lie. I told him I didn't want him to disappear, but that wasn't the full truth. I wanted him, not just to stay, but because deep in my mind I knew that I loved him. Now's not the time to be thinking of this. I need to focus, and maybe then I can address these feelings later." Momo stood at attention as the race siren sounded, and she saw Todoroki getting ready to launch a wave of ice inwards. As she flew past the ice and alongside Bakugo and Todoroki, Momo responded by pointing her right arm to the ground, sending a metal pole blasting out of it. She landed, immediately launching herself into a sprint as she saw Mineta scurry on ahead, then barely avoiding a giant metal hand. A throwback to the past. The entrance exam robots are here, Present Mike screamed, and Momo hurriedly opened her shirt to form a cannon, shooting a cannonball at one to blaze a trail through the metal monsters. Todoroki followed suit with his ice, but this time it was for himself, obstructing the competition's progress with another wave of ice. Momo leapt over it with another pole, racing past others and through some of the other robots until she noticed a big hole in the ground. The second challenge. Greetings from the fall. Present Mike shouted. Across the gap were stone pillars connected to rope, and a girl with pink hair was speeding ahead as she considered how to get past this obstacle. She recalled Zero and how his movement style was similar to one of the first generation's legends, creating the devices that Hero used for his particular ability. Momo dove into the gap as the audience gasped in surprise, until one pillar was seen with a white strand of thread on it. For a moment, the black-haired girl was seen flying through the air with a series of flips and spins, each showcasing her athletic ability. Upon closer inspection, the audience could see two devices on her wrists as she swung through the fall. Go see her, folks. This race is becoming one to remember. The audience was giddy with anticipation as presenter Mike yelled. Hey, my thing is swinging. As Zero began to swing through the fall, he saw Momo roll to the other side and immediately resume her run toward the two boys in front of him. As she continued, she saw a few students ahead until one stepped on the wrong spot and was blown back with a large pink explosion. Smooth as silk. She joked quickly. And thank you, Father, for your connection to the Parker family archive. A perilous minefield to the finish, it's the final stretch. Present Mike called out. Momo saw Bakugo and Todoroki ahead and tried to think of a way to catch up, but then she remembered that she still had the devices mounted, so she looked at her wrists and thought of a quick idea. She shot a white thread onto Bakugo and Todoroki, pulling them to the ground as the devices ran out of fluid. She ran along Todoroki's ice path as she took the devices off her wrists, and the two recovered a moment later to resume their race, with Momo now following closely behind them. I've managed to catch up with you, Yaoyorozu-chan. Mineta grinned and clung to the back of her open shirt as she yelled. Leave me alone. She shouted as the purple pervert attached to her back attempted to frantically paw at her chest, diverting the girl's attention from the two in front of her who were locked in a first-place tie. The two edged closer to their objective until Bakugo was hit by a wave of ice to the hands, which sent him crashing and falling past the finish line just after Todoroki had crossed it. And Todoroki Shoto is the winner or the first event, Present Mike shouted, and the dual-quirked boy grinned as he glanced at Momo, who had fallen to 5th place because of Mineta's distraction. The other students went back to the stage, where Midnight appeared. Izuku had returned at this point, approaching Momo, who was now putting on a fresh UA training shirt because the previous one was still fastened to Mineta's hairballs. Momo, that was incredible, said Izuku. Momo twirled her front bang in response, saying, oh, well, thank you, Izuku. I would have done better had Mineta not jumped on my back at the last minute. Momo, I have no doubt about that. I may have a talk with him about that later. I apologize as well for not being able to speak with you over the last few weeks. I was merely attempting to comprehend when the boxer uttered. And no, it's okay. In fact, I was doing the same thing. Do you want to discuss it following the festival? Momo inquired. With a hint of red on both of their faces, Izuku replied, sure. Todoroki then approached them, concentrating solely on Momo. Todoroki said, hello, Yaoyorozu-chan. Hello, was her reply. What a fantastic performance. He kissed the back of her hand, confusing the girl with his words and actions, and then walked away, saying, I hope to see you around much more this tournament. What was the purpose of that? With both fists clenched behind his back, Izuku posed the question. She wiped her hand on the leg of her pants and said, I'm not too sure myself. The race and the match were both incredible. Look up here, everyone, Midnight said. The next event will be decided by us. She pointed to a screen with her whip, with a picture of an event, as the crows watched the image start to spin faster and faster, before slowing to show the words Cavalry Battle. The rules are simple. The top rider will attempt to steal as many headbands from the other riders as he can, so 3 people will be the cavalry horse. Headbands must be worn in areas where they are easily retrieved, and riders cannot be intentionally separated from their horses. Anyone caught intentionally removing riders or falling will be disqualified. To choose teams, you have 1 minute. By the way, the previous event's top spot is worth 10 million points. Proceed. Every student huddled up, glaring at Todoroki, who scowled and dismissed them until he saw Momo. He scowled even more when he saw Izuku with her, knowing that she would still join forces with him because of their close relationship. "Momo, would you like to come along?" Izuku inquired. She answered, "I would most definitely like to, Izuku." When Izuku realized his mistake, he quickly covered his mouth and joked, "That's a first." Momo was going to ask him about it, but decided it could wait for the moment. "Who else ought to join our team?" she inquired. The two should have been blushing and stuttering over their previous behavior, but they chose to put their best effort into the festival first. "Have you two assembled a team yet?" Mina and Kirishima approached them and said, "We'd like to accompany you." As they started making plans, Izuku thought to himself, "That's a first." He quickly shook his head to get his past out of his head. "So, Momo-chan, what is the plan?" Mina inquired. "I have a thought." Because of his hardening, Kirishima-kun is able to remain at the forefront as the leader of both attack and defense. The three of them nodded and positioned themselves, with Izuku jumping on top as he put on the headbands and tightened his arm wraps. "I will take the left side and prevent any incoming attacks from that side, and you can use your acid to ward off anyone from the other side, or give us a way to escape if we become cornered by Todoroki-kun's ice," Momo explained, making a pair of acid-resistant boots for herself and Kirishima. "So I take it that I'll be the rider?" Izuku inquired. Momo thought, "Oh, you will be later." She coughed a little into her hand and quickly shook her head, flushed. "That's right. Your speed will make you a great dodger if necessary, and your strength quirk will be able to stop any attacks that might be directed at us. It would only be fair for you to take the lead since you are the most skilled of us all, right?" the girl with the black hair said. "That makes sense, I suppose. I'll take a moment to review my notes." Izuku then took out his notebook and opened to the outboxing section, saying, "I think I have something that'll help greatly for playing keep away. Maintaining distance and using longer range punches to counter any incoming attacks are the primary goals of outboxing, a style that is solely focused on outpacing the opponent. Advantages: gives more breathing room during a battle when one's stamina is low. Remains more aggressive when striking opponents at a distance. A more passive disposition gives others more chances to initiate contact, ideal for counters. Weaknesses: the movements of the opponent must be the sole focus. The boxer will remain vulnerable if they attempt to counter feints. Weak against swarmers because they can penetrate the range of an outboxer. Let's try our hardest." As they completed the cavalry battle preparations, Izuku closed his notebook and said, she made shoes for herself and Kirishima that would help them slide across Mina's acid when she spread it. Izuku was sitting on top of them, wearing headbands around his neck and forehead, and his right hand was wrapped with the special boxing tape while the other hand was left bare. The four of them entered the field, where other people were sitting on top of their groups. "All right, you have 15 minutes in total to remove as many headbands from other pupils as you can. Are you ready? Go," Midnight shouted, and Izuku turned left instantly to see Bakugo charge at them, riding a horse made up of Tokiyami, Uraraka, and Siro. The boy leapt from them to launch his explosives at their green rider, and Bakugo's scream was the first thing the competitors and audience heard throughout the arena. "Deku." Bakugo tried to grab at Izuku's headbands, but Izuku instantly swerved to the left. The explosive boy blasted back into the air, but Siro's tape caught him and he returned to his horse. "We must relocate," Izuku shouted as the three nodded and started to run, avoiding the grasps of Minetta's group, who used Tsuyu's tongue as their offensive while shielded by Shoji's arms, and the likes of Itsuka Kendo, who attempted to stop or grab at their bands with her giant hand's quirk. Izuku's group's plan was to just go on the offensive, with Kirishima taking the hits and Momo making items to further that goal. As they did so, Izuku would grab any headbands they could, his gloved hand punching away any attempts that slipped through, and swerving through any ranged moves like Tsuyu's tongue grabs. Izuku looked right to see Todoroki's group, which included Iida, Kaminari, and a pink-haired girl named Hatsume Mei, the rider enclosing everyone with a wall of ice. Izuku scowled, realizing that they would win if they just waited until the timer went off. "We must break through that barrier. Can you lay down a stream of acid, Mina?" Izuku shouted. The horned girl nodded, spraying a line of acid towards the ice wall as it began to slowly melt. "Momo." Kirishima, as the two nodded, he said. They charged at the wall of ice as Izuku started to expel green lightning from his form, signifying the use of one for all. Izuku's gloved fist smashed the wall just before it made contact, shattering the icy barrier as they were met with the shocked faces of Kaminari and Todoroki. The blonde boy was about to launch a lightning attack, with Todoroki shielding his group with ice while Momo hastily covered her own group with a lightning-proof blanket to avoid the shock. Seeing that their offensive strategies would fail, Mei and Iida attempted to flee using Iida's engine legs, a pair of mechanical ones that Mei had built and worn, but Iida's legs stalled because the ice had unintentionally blocked off his mufflers, while Mei's short-circuited because of Kaminari. Izuku, still using one for all, then jerked his free hand forward, snatching the 10 million point headband from Todoroki's forehead as his left side flared with flames for a brief moment, surprising both the boy and the boxer as the flames vanished as quickly as they had appeared on his skin. Team Midoriya appears to have taken the lead and claimed the headband, Midnight declared. "We must get away." As everyone began to pay attention to them, especially the Todoroki group, from whom they had just stolen, Izuku remarked. "You got it," Momo shouted, forming a riot shield. Kirishima triggered his hardening, and Mina spread more acid for them to slide on. Izuku swerved deftly through the heightened attempts to steal the 10 million point headband around his neck as they continued to evade the wrath of the other students who were pursuing them, while Bakugo and his group were sidetracked by a blonde boy with an odd 1A complex, while Todoroki turned back to them with a heavy glare and a conflicted expression in his eyes. "Coming," he shouted, and the others saw them too. Momo had just come up with a plan, Mina had sprayed out a row of acid, Kirishima's hardening was still strong, and Izuku at the top raised his hands in a block, gloved hand at the front. "Jump, Izuku. Please switch with me, Kirishima-kun," she shouted, and Izuku did just that. He landed back on the three of them, Momo in the front now, her face adorned with a determined expression. He saw the sparkling effect of her creation activate, and he looked forward to Todoroki. They charged at a speed that was equal to Izuku's at 8%, as the boy with the two hairs reached out and got closer and closer, almost touching the headband, until he was suddenly facing the sky. "Oh no!" Unable to break in time, Iida shouted as they raced up a ramp made by a smiling Momo. "The creation is finished." As the group soared above them, she said, they crashed into a confused Bakugo who was trying to fly in towards them again. The boy fell, but he was able to stay floating in the air until Zero grabbed his screaming form from the air because he had reluctantly accepted an idea from Uraraka. "Wow, what a defense!" Despite the full-on assault, Team Midori is holding strong, Mike, present, shouted. Aizawa went on to say, "You'll have to be faster to get that headband. There's just 1 minute left." A ring reverberated through the air before Shinso and Monoma's groups could actually do anything. Midnight's shout attracted the attention of the numerous riders across the arena, who now chose to target one another and aim for second rather than possibly fail attacking Izuku. His group kept running around the arena, with Izuku slamming away more and more people who thought they could take the 10 million point band with his glove. "It's time." The groups halted their movements as Midnight yelled. Team Midoriya takes the lead, followed by Todoroki and Bakugo in second and third place, and a Team Shinso. They hopped to fourth, but how? The boy with the lavender hair grinned as Present Mike declared. "After an hour-long break, we'll start the next event." Izuku was about to go get some food and do some analysis of the quirks he had seen when he heard a tap on his shoulder and turned to see a gray and a turquoise pair of eyes glaring at him. Present Mike shouted this as the students began to disperse for their break. "Midoriya, meet me behind the arena," he said, glaring at the boxer, who, despite his confusion, nodded and followed Endeavor's son. After a short while, "All right, what did you wish to share with me?" Izuku inquired. "All Might's power and yours are equal. Are you his illegitimate child, I must ask?" Izuku sighed and answered his question. "He is not my father, even though our abilities are comparable. I respect him as a teacher and a hero, and that's all," he said. "Now, Todoroki-kun, allow me to ask you a question too. You want Momo, but why? Why do you feel the need to prove your superiority over me?" he inquired, and Todoroki answered by telling him about his childhood, the violent training he had received from Endeavor as a child, the cause of his scar from his mother's trauma, and the promise he had made to never use his left side to disobey his father's wishes. Izuku remained silent as Todoroki concluded his recollection of his past and everything that had come with it. Izuku perked up again when the dual-haired boy said, "And with Yayorozu. By the end of the festival, my father had made me find a bride for a quirk marriage. Yayorozu has a strong quirk and a disposition that would make our marriage last, which is why I chose her. I know you may be starting to feel something for her, but I advise you to stop now because she will be mine." Suddenly, a blur sped past his head and into the wall next to him. revealing a tiny crater with spiderweb cracks beneath Izuku's left fist. You're only pursuing Momo to get even with your father? You have no right to involve her in your personal problems, he growled. From what you just told me, you are no better than him if you want to take away someone else's freedom for your own benefit, he screamed. I can't even blink at you on an equal basis if you won't even attempt to do that with all of your might. I'm sorry, Todoroki-kun, but if you want to beat me and win, I won't let you put forth very little effort. Izuku said, go ahead and rely on just your ice, but know that if you do I won't even bother trying to fight at full strength. He gave Todoroki one last look before leaving, unaware that two people had overheard. Yaoyorozu Momo, who was shocked when Izuku's feelings were revealed and had her hands over her mouth in surprise, and the grimacing form of Katsuki Bakugo, who stood with his back to the wall, glaring. Eventually, sitting in the cafeteria, where everyone else was talking to students, Izuku was writing a quirk analysis of Todoroki, quickly moving his hand to sign autographs for fans, and closing the book when he noticed Kato walking up to him. Are you prepared for the upcoming event, kid? I need you to be rested and prepared for whatever comes next, Kato said. Putting the notebook away before President Mike's voice signaled the end of the break, he replied, I'm ready, Kato-sensei. He had a determined expression on his face and said, meeting and fighting Joe earlier really motivated me to succeed, and another encounter earlier I need to reach. The two parted ways, and Izuku made his way outside into a very strange scene. What is going on with 1A? Mike, present, shouted. Mineta, you are a jerk. You deceived us. Why am I always entangled in Mineta's schemes? Momo cried, curling into a ball with the other girls in the class, all dressed as cheerleaders. Izuku wanted to beat the living daylights out of Mineta, but he also wanted to give the purple pervert a high five when he saw Momo cheering her on, so he chose the third option and went to console the girl. Don't worry, Momo. He hugged the girl and said, you can just get back at Mineta-kun and Kaminari-kun later. He thought, her skin is so soft, as he felt her soft bare midriff, which was exposed by the adorable outfit. Thanks, Izuku. She said, getting to her feet as he moved away from her. I'm just sick of being the object of that pervert's plots. In any case, why does Hagakure-chan appear so excited? Observing the invisible girl enthusiastically waving her arms, she inquired. Even though we were duped, we can still enjoy ourselves with this, said Hagakure. How? Uraraka inquired. I have a thought. Give me an eye. Standing erect, she shouted, pom-poms straight up in the sky. Give me a Z. With his tongue as close to a Z as he could, Tsuyu stood beside Hagakure. Give me a U. Because Mineta was the reason she was wearing the outfit, Jiru was still opposed to the idea, but she gave in and stood beside Tsuyu with her arms crossed in a U. Give me a K. Uraraka leapt alongside Jiru and formed a K. And give me a U. With a joyful smile, Momo made another U to finish the formation. What spell is that? Seeing Izuku flushed, Mina inquired. Izuku. At his flushed face, they screamed and smiled. Izuku stammered, TT thanks girls. They laughed at his flushed face and then parted to put on their other clothes. The boxer turned to face Mineta, who turned a little pale. You ruined Momo's chance to win the first event, and I was about to punch you, but this makes me happy, he said, gesturing to the girls, especially Momo. You're secure. Mineta exhaled, and the girls swiftly changed back into their training attire before the next event was announced. For now, he said. Let's watch what happens in the end. As the words battle tournament were displayed, the image on the screen swung back and forth, slowing with a light ring. Midnight said. The top 5 teams from the cavalry battle will now go through. The audience applauded the announcement that, you have it here folks. The final event is the students battling it out to the top in one-on-one duels, until 2 hands went up from the student body. Ojiro said, I'm sorry, but I have to decline. I remember one moment I'm going through the cavalry battle, it being over the next. I cannot participate if I can't even remember how I got in, Ojiro replied. Hagakure said, why not do well in this tournament to show that you belong? He clarified, it's a matter of pride. I can't just go on without knowing how I got there. A child from 1B, who shared Ojiro's logic, said, I agree. I'm declining too. Then we can have Team Itsuka, who just barely didn't make it, take their places instead, said Midnight. Now, here's the roster for the first round. Izuku looked at his placement as the student names were displayed. He cracked his knuckles and thought, I'll have to pass through Shinso Hitoshi before I can reach Todoroki-kun. Let's do this, Bakugo exclaimed, his palms already glimmering with excitement. As his quirk came to life, Kirishima pumped his arms and exclaimed, "I want to win." With a faint steam rising from his eyesight, Todoroki declared, "Victory is mine." Izuku said, slamming his gloved hands together, "I'd like to see you try." Momo declared, "I'm ready to compete." When the students dispersed to the stands, Midnight exclaimed, "You kids are all pumped up. The first fight is Izuku Midoriya vs Shinso Hitoshi." Izuku went to his room to get ready, as did his opponent with the lavender hair. While Kato waited for the fights to start with all might, Izuku practiced a few swings to allow his blood to flow. When he opened his door after hearing a knock, Ojiro was there. Izuku said, "Ojiro-san, what brings you here?" The tailed boy answered, "I've come with some advice for you regarding Shinso." The two sat at the table after Izuku opened the door for him. "I remember starting the cavalry battle until he said something to me. 1 second I was listening to what he was saying. Then I answered him and all of a sudden the cavalry battle is over and we pass. I believe his quirk is some form of brainwashing. My best guess is a verbal response since it only occurred after I had started to respond to him, so be wary of that," he cautioned. "Thanks," Izuku replied. "I'll keep that in mind." Izuku nodded, and Ojiro said, "I'll leave you to prepare now, but we really should spar sometime." Then, an idea struck him, and he left. He said, "Ojiro-san, why are you helping me?" To respond, the blonde turned around and grinned a little. As Ojiro exited the room, the boxer laughed and said, "I respect your effort, Midoriya-san. And if I'm being honest with you, I'm kind of a fan." Izuku admired the white tape that was snugly wrapped around his hands as he sat down and turned off his gloves. "Momo, I'll definitely protect you." When his match was called to start in a minute, the boy stood up and thought, "I'll protect you and save Todoroki from himself at the same time." He got up and walked to the arena, wearing a Ua tracksuit over his clothes as he entered the fighting area. Shinso was on the other side of him, grinning at him. Present Mike exclaimed, "He's here all the way from the General Ed Department, and he's ready to win. It's Hitoshi Shinso," as the boy received cheers. When Izuku entered the arena, there was a lot more cheering than what Shinso received. And here's his opponent. He's been seen on TV, he's on his way to be the king of the ring, and he's the one I secretly want to win. "Give it up for Midoriya Izuku," Izuku said. "Now then. Are you ready? Fight," shouted microphone present Mike. As he spoke, Izuku began to approach Shinso. Sweating because Izuku was still approaching him with his mouth shut and his eyes glaring, he said, "How shameful of your monkey friend." Was he too weak to even try the final event? Izuku's punch toward him stopped him before he could open his mouth after a fresh taunt entered his mind. When Izuku delivered a strong uppercut that narrowly missed the boy, he flung his body to the left. Then, while attempting to block a right straight, Shinso was pushed back, breaking his block instantly and allowing a left hook to strike his right cheek. When he got up, he chose to abandon all plans and just charge after the gloved fist sent him tumbling to the ground. He swung open his mouth and yelled, "Why do you with blessed quirks always have it better?" at Izuku. The boy used his left arm to block the oncoming attack and his right to repeatedly poke Shinso in the face. The boy staggered back, and Izuku seemed to vanish. After a brief glance to the left and right, Shinso felt 2 powerful blows strike his back. When the boy turned around, Izuku jumped back and moved behind him, throwing 2 more punches. Mike the presenter asked, "What's his deal?" His quirk, hypnotism, is actually a decent quirk that would function as a non-confrontational support. However, he could not join the hero course because it wasn't a quirk designed for that irrational mess known as the entrance exam, so he was designated to the general ed section, replied Aizawa. "How lucky must you have been to get both a powerful quirk and proper training. Meanwhile I've been criticized my whole life for having a villain's quirk." Shinso continued to pursue him. "I wish I could tell you what it was like to not have a quirk, but I know I'm lucky." Izuku pondered. He chose to go easy on Shinso by activating 5% and throwing a right hook that sent Shinso flying in order to avoid prolonging the fight and possibly degrading him. The boxer landed just at the edge of the arena, and Izuku chased after the airborne boy to give him a jolt haymaker on his stomach, which spiked the boy onto the grass. Present Mike shouted, "Izuku Midoriya wins the first battle," to the audience's cheers. Izuku gave Shinso a pat on the back and assisted him in standing up. Izuku remarked, "You did great, Shinso-san." Before he heard a particular area of the arena erupt with cheers, the boy said, "You sure? I didn't even land a blow on you. I wasn't even able to show them anything other than that I'm a good punching bag." "You did great, Shinso-san." That boy gave it his all despite the unfavorable situation. "I may see if I can get him as an intern later on." You showed those hero course students what's what last game. We'll get him next year. Izuku patted Shinso on the back as the voices echoed in his ears, causing him to cry at the compliments. You did good, Shinso-san. Even if you weren't able to make it as far as you wanted, the rest of the tournament allowed you to show them what you were capable of, Izuku replied. As he left the arena, Shinso said, yeah, I guess so. Izuku followed suit. He walked over to the 1A seating area and sat down beside Momo and Mina. That was an excellent performance, Izuku, Momo replied. With a notebook in hand, Izuku said, thanks. Despite not being able to see it in action earlier, he opened it and began writing down a section about Shinso and his quirk. He wrote to Mina while the next two were getting ready for battle. Izuku inquired, what's the current fight? Kirishima-kun is against that Tetsu guy from 1B. She stated. After a moment, Izuku put the notebook away and looked at the cover, which said Quirk Analysis number 18. Mina said, you have 18 of those? Yeah. I fight people with interesting quirks. It would be a crime for me to not write them all down. Izuku responded. Then, as the next fight was about to begin, he and the others looked up. As the gray-haired boy proudly walked onto the stage, the audience erupted in cheers. He's a hard as steel and roaring to go. Give it up for Tetsu. The audience erupted in cheers as the red-haired boy proudly walked onto the stage, saying, and here's his opponent. He's hard as stone and roaring to go. Give it up for Kirishima Eijirou. The two boys shouted, wait a second, our intros are exactly the same. As the two used their quirks, Aizawa said, don't care. Fight. Over the course of 10 minutes, Izuku and the others witnessed the two engage in a hand-to-hand slugfest in which they repeatedly slammed fists into one another. Izuku noted both quirks as he witnessed them in action. Izuku said, concentrating entirely on the fight, it would have been interesting to see them as boxers. As the two fell to the ground together, Mina joked, true. At the same time, they'd probably focus more on how manly the opponent would be than actually fight each other. This match is a tie. We'll probably settle it with arm wrestling, or something, said Midnight. Alright, the next fight is Yayorozu Momo versus Tokiyami Fumikage, she said. Momo said, I guess it's my turn. Izuku shouted, get him, Momo, and she grinned in response. Eventually, Momo began opening her shirt as she entered the arena, her preparation merely a cursory review of her formula book. They stood ominously opposite her, Tokiyami on the other side, dark shadow ready. Present Mike shouted, fanservice aside, let's begin. Fight. With dark shadow in front of him, prepared to knock her back, Momo began to run towards Tokiyami. To deflect the oncoming attack, she rolled sideways, forming a shield. When Tokiyami saw the shield, he and Dark Shadow ran in with the intention of knocking her out of the arena. However, Momo rolled out of the side of the shield as though it had flown back, hurling something at him. In addition to reflecting it, Dark Shadow was in the middle of the explosion when the flashbang exploded. Tokiyami exclaimed, crap, as Momo rushed toward him while holding boxing gloves. Observing the green gloves on her hands, Mina inquired, did you have a part in that? I think so, inquired Izuku. Before the effects of the flashbang subsided and Dark Shadow returned to a manageable level of strength, Momo punched Tokiyami in the face once, twice, and 3 times. Momo tried to punch again, but the shadow creature blocked it. As he was hurled to the edge of the arena, it placed his hands on her shoulders and threw her behind him, landing her on the grass outside the arena. Midnight declared, Momo Yayorozu is out of bounds. The winner is Tokiyami Fumikage. Izuku noticed Momo's eyes turning red just before she left the arena after getting up and leaving. As Izuku thought, Momo. He got up and left the arena, wandering until he came across Momo sitting on a tree branch with a metal pole on the ground that represented her method of rising. Izuku got her to look at him by saying, Momo. When he reached the base of the tree, he said, you did great out there. What's the matter? Izuku. She uttered, observing him while ignoring the enormous glacier that appeared inside the arena out of nowhere. He nodded in response to her question, it's just. I lost so easily due to a quick distraction. You remember that I was given entry by recommendation, correct? As she felt the branch tremble a little, she said, everyone in our class worked themselves to the bone in order to gain a position I got without lifting a finger. Sometimes I ask myself if I'm really meant to be a hero. She glanced to her right and saw Izuku sitting beside her, staring at the stadium with a serious expression on his face. I remember when I was starting my boxing career. My first match was a loss. a knockout in the first round to a man who had a quirk that granted him the ability to rotate his shoulders at incredible speeds. I remember the regret I had back then, asking myself, why? Why do I continue to fight? I've known nothing except for the fact that I was considered worthless, so why bother fighting at all? Then I remembered that my mother had been afflicted with a villain's quirk, giving her an illness the doctors are still trying to resolve today. He elaborated, I wanted to tell you this because while you feel an opportunity was handed to you, it's really not. It may be there, but you have to be the one who works towards turning that into a reality. At the same time, fighting not only led to me being able to help her, but it also gave me a goal. What was that? Inquired Momo. My goal is to become the next symbol of peace, one who can reassure those who live in pain and fear, unsure if they'll want to live to see tomorrow. At the same time, I may have found something else worth reaching for. He said, his face turning to gaze at her. The two sat silently as she flushed. After what seemed like an eternity, the two felt their eyes close as they drew closer, their lips finally meeting. The two parted after a minute, their eyes still closed and their faces still red. Momo inhaled, because the smile on the boxer's face now was unlike anything she had ever seen. When Izuku saw Momo, her features shining like the sun and her smile twice as bright, he could swear that nothing in his life could ever match the sensation. Izuku said, Momo. I love you. Momo answered, Izuku. I feel the same way. After exchanging even more radiant smiles, the two embraced passionately for a number of minutes. This is the first time something like this has ever happened to me before. Not just romance either. In middle school I never even had friends to hang out with. But once I got into UA, I met you, Kirishima-kun, Mina-chan and Jiru-chan. For once I've been able to know what it's like to have friends other than Kato-sensei. Momo said, Izuku. What do you mean? The new couple then made their way back to the stadium with their hands clasped together, saying, after the tournament I'll tell you. But for now, let's head back. What happened? You missed some pretty good fights, Mina replied. I'll send them to you later. After Bakugo defeated Kirishima, Izuku and Momo sat down and said, thanks, Mina-chan. It looks as though the next winner will have to go against him. Momo continued. Mina took note of the pair's hands but refrained from commenting until after the tournament. Present Mike remarked, what an exciting match, right Eraserhead? Izuku's face hardened as Aizawa said, sure. Next up is Izuku Midoriya and Todoroki Shoto. Make your way to your prep rooms now. Izuku got up and walked away, saying, I guess I'm up. A man bursting with flames stopped him on his way to his room. Endeavor was the number 2 hero. Furthermore, Todoroki claims that he was the original motivation behind his desire to involve Momo in his personal issues. Endeavor said, boy. Shoto was raised for the specific purpose of surpassing All Might. I request for you to make him use his flames. Izuku said, I can do that, but I won't do it for you. He's only putting out half of his effort while everyone else is giving their all in this festival, and that is enough to make me angry. However, he also had informed me that you essentially abused him through training in order to become the perfect creation. Endeavor answered, so? What purpose do you have for telling me this? Izuku said, I have a proposition. I will make him tap into his full power, but what I need from you is to get rid of the Quirk marriage deal you made with him. His way of solving the problem you created is intruding into my personal life, and I don't want that to continue. So, do we have a deal? He asked while the second hero was staring at him briefly. You have a deal. Make him use his flames, and that deal I made with Shoto will become no more. The hero of Hellfire said. Izuku gave him a final glance before heading out after they shook hands. He went into his preparation room and reviewed his Todoroki notes. Todoroki Shoto is his name. Half cold, half hot is a quirk. Todoroki can produce enormous amounts of both fire and ice, but it appears that she only uses the ice portion of the power. His quirk appears to be limitless, but it might be related to internal temperature. Maybe he's limited in how much ice and fire he can use. Techniques for combat. Use one for all and look for an opening by avoiding or breaking the ice. Force him into your strike zone as soon as an opening is discovered. Slugging will be too slow to deal damage once I break through the ice, and outboxing will only freeze me. The best strategy will be to swarm him. He will try his best not to use the fire producing half of his body during a battle, so keep that in mind when you aim for it. Izuku closed his notebook after reviewing his notes one last time and inhaled deeply. To make sure he was still physically prepared to fight, he practiced a few more punches and eased out of his position when he felt he was ready. Momo was standing there grinning when the boxer opened the door. Izuku said, Hi Momo. She said, "Hello Izuku." She smiled and said, "I thought I'd stop by and say good luck." He started to say, "Well, that's awfully sweet of why," but was cut off by the sensation of gentle lips touching his. A moment later, Momo disconnected with a joyful squeal. In her own words, "I've always wanted to do that with a significant other." Izuku reveled in her company. "This girl is just. Also cute." After the kiss, he smiled and let out a mental scream. Before heading into the stadium, Izuku gave her a brief embrace and said, "I'll do my best." As he entered the stadium, Present Mike shouted, and introducing his opponent, "It's the person you've all been waiting for," punching his way through the cavalry battle. "Give it up for Midoriya Izuku." Izuku lowered himself into his familiar fighting stance, gloves activating and hovering in front of his face as he returned the glare that Todoroki was giving him from the other side of the stage. "Now, are you ready? Fight." Izuku had to move to the right as soon as Present Mike gave them the all-clear because a huge ice glacier had formed where he had been standing. In order to avoid another wave that was coming at him, Izuku launched himself into a full sprint, sprinting closer to Todoroki. He shouted, "You can't win this Midoriya." Instead, Izuku ran forward and leapt to avoid a second as he slammed his fist into a wave of ice. Izuku began to weave left and right to avoid the storm of ice that was hurled at him, thinking, "Come on, show me an opening." Todoroki continued to push forward with more waves of ice as his frustration increased at Izuku's inability to let him win. Without using his quirk, Izuku slid down to the wave and jumped over it, just in time to see another wave come at him. Izuku then delivered a cross that sent the dual-quirked boy reeling backwards after slamming his right fist into the back of Todoroki's head with a jolt haymaker, causing the boy to stagger forward before landing. He turned swiftly, causing his shoes to squeak. Izuku stood there, still prepared to kick his ass, and he arose with a growl. Then he ran forward, leaping at Todoroki to give the boy near the end of the stage a clear jolt haymaker. After realizing this, the boy launched a pillar of ice upward to freeze the boxer once he was in the air. As he prepared another move, he was surprised to see the boxer kick off the ice as it flew towards him. Todoroki saw Izuku land on his right foot with his right fist wound back, quickly propelling himself forward with his left fist outstretched after landing on his right foot. Todoroki used his ice to form a shield, but the boxer smashed through it, sending him flying back as the punch continued into his face. Todoroki used a little wall of ice to keep himself from falling off the edge, but he only had time to build another in front of him because Izuku was already drawing closer. Present Mike exclaimed, "Todoroki is being tossed like a ragdoll." In the stands. "Get him, Midori," exclaimed Mina, eager for the battle. "Midori?" inquired Momo. The girl with the pink skin said, "What? It fits." Momo said, "True." Then she got to her feet and covered her mouth with her hands. Momo shouted, "Win!" Izuku and Kirishima and Mina both grinned. Returning to the battle. With the boxer's eyes narrowing, Todoroki snarled, "Midoriya, why aren't you using your quirk?" They were beginning to appear in slower intervals, but he threw another wave of ice at Izuku. With his hair casting shadows over his eyes, Izuku screamed, "I refuse to give my all towards you until you decide to do the same for me. Show me your fire, Todoroki-kun," and swarmed the boy once more. Todoroki was on the verge of using another ice attack when he became aware that his ice half was nearly at its temperature limit. Due to his hesitation, the boxer delivered a powerful series of blows to him, each with the same intensity as when he had struck the concrete wall earlier. After being pushed back, Todoroki screamed, "Shut up!" and hurled an ice pillar forward, which struck Izuku in the face. Todoroki hurried in, thinking that would be his opportunity to freeze him, but instead he was punched, sending him flying to the ground and performing a triple backflip. "We need to see that again," shouted current presenter Mike. Todoroki looked at the screens, which reenacted the entire scene, beginning with the boxer's face being struck. He smirked and began to move backwards as it grazed the tips of his hair, but instead of a pillar striking him in the face, it zoomed in and played it again in slow motion. His right arm then maneuvered for an uppercut, which ended in a straight upward punch to the face as Todoroki fell for his trap. Sendo smash. Izuku pondered as he executed the move. I was played. He was such an idiot for playing me. After watching the replay, Todoroki stood up, his teeth clenched in rage. "Use your fire, Todoroki-kun. I know that you would have been able to get me in that moment had you used it." Todoroki, shivering from overusing his quirk, questioned, "Why are you so insistent on me using his quirk? Did my father pay you off?" "Let me respond to your question with another. Why do you continue to put minimum effort into this festival?" Izuku responded. Todoroki asked. What are you talking about? Izuku ducked under another wave of ice that he threw, stomping his foot so hard that even Todoroki froze to hear. Izuku abruptly commanded, everyone's trying their hardest to win, and yet you insist on defeating everyone without even using your full power. What the fuck kind of person are you to do that? His angry words captured the audience's and his opponent's full attention. So many people are expecting great things of our class, and I don't want to send the wrong idea to them. I cannot show them that we pride ourselves on fighting with minimal effort. As a fighter, I refuse to let anyone deny their full potential over a grudge, especially when you try to throw my personal life away for your own gain. I cannot, no, I refuse to lose to you if you won't even use your full power. Todoroki shouted back, I've told you, I will never use his power. Izuku growled and hurled a series of hooks at the adversary, violently jerking his head to the left and right with each blow. Izuku screamed, it's your power, Todoroki, and Todoroki fell to the ground with his last blow. Todoroki's eyes grew wide as he remembered what Izuku had said during the previous pause. My vision is swirling from his punches, but winning isn't the only thing at stake. Ignore the proposal. Ignore the training of endeavor. I just have to concentrate on beating you first, he pondered. Izuku saw the red tidal wave rushing off his skin like a cloak of fire as he felt his left side begin to burn with fire. Izuku Midoriya exclaimed, that's what I was waiting for, as he first made his quirk known to the general public. As green lightning started to emerge and radiate from his now glowy body, red lines appeared across his skin. The boxer was seen smiling crazily as 8% of one for all pulsed through his body like a war drum. Thank you, Midoriya, but this is where you lose. Todoroki grinned as he spoke. SHOOTOO, roared Endeavor from the stands, grinning as his hellfire exploded outward with joy. His calls were ignored, and the two fighters' attention was solely on one another at that precise moment. Izuku grinned back, I'm still going to win it, just you watch. The man said. The boxer crouched low to avoid the flames that tickled his skin and tank top as Todoroki threw a torrent of fire at him. A huge avalanche of ice froze over the majority of his body as he rushed forward, his glowing form slicing through the flames to jump. Izuku sidestepped to avoid more fire and swiftly brought his free right hand down to break himself free. While Izuku was waiting for Todoroki to move, a foolish but brilliant idea flashed through his mind. Izuku charged forward to smash the ice with his left fist as it flew at him, continuing his assault on the boy. Izuku slammed his right foot into the ground as he got close, and Todoroki sent out a wave of flames in the hopes that the boxer would back off. However, Izuku pushed through the flames and delivered a left hook to the liver, briefly stunned Todoroki. Izuku hopped back smiling as the now shirtless boxer followed with a left cross that stunned him and a right hook that caused his head to jerk to the right. Izuku pulled his left fist into his side and said, corkscrew. Smash! He shouted, unleashing his blow. The fist twisted as it traveled through the air, and as it struck Todoroki's face, One for All infused the punch. This caused his form to spiral through the air, forming a tiny cyclone from the punch that pulled him along with it to the arena's edge. Todoroki managed to get away by using his ice to anchor himself to the ground, but he was caught off guard when Izuku used his right to launch him away with a second corkscrew cross. After rolling to the ground, Todoroki got back up a moment later. This is it, Izuku exclaimed, pushing himself to the limit to be encircled by 15% of One for All, his body trembling a little from the power. As he charged towards Izuku, Todoroki activated both sides of his quirk, creating a pillar of fiery red and icy blue. The boxer followed suit, but the floor beneath him crumbled into dust and debris as a green and red lightning bolt blazed through the arena. They'll kill each other if the next hit lands, Cementos declared. With concrete walls and sleeping gas forming between the two, Midnight yelled, you two need to stop. The two crashed through them and into each other, causing an earth-shattering explosion that sent shockwaves through the entire arena, shaking everyone inside. A shadowy figure was seen soaring through the air and spinning as he collided with the arena walls with a loud crack, causing the dust to settle. Izuku was spotted in the middle of the arena, in his signature uppercut pose, with burns and bruises all over his bare chest. The gloves returned to their boxing tape shape as he dropped his purple right arm, panting heavily. As the smoke cleared, Todoroki was observed unconscious and lodged in the wall. Present Mike exclaimed, the winner is Izuku Midoriya AA, and a moment later, there was thunderous applause and screams of approval. Izuku watched as Todoroki was carried out on a stretcher, still gasping with fatigue, and then a robot assisted in carrying him out of the arena as he fell as well. Eventually, half an hour later, Izuku awoke on a hospital bed, sitting up and holding his head in one hand. He looked out the window and rubbed his hands after unwrapping them. He had time to rest before the final fight because it appears that the students and audience were given a 2-hour break to fix the arena and get ready for the last competitors. He noticed that the infirmary was deserted and that Todoroki was still unconscious in the bed beside him on his left. After a while, he saw a recovery girl enter and gaze at the unconscious boy as well as at him. As the two were resting, she said, "I already healed you too, so don't worry about that. However, don't go so overboard next time. I won't heal you if you do," and left the room. Todoroki had to deal with something involving Endeavor first, so he left as soon as he woke up. Later, he recognized the voice coming through the door and grinned because he knew who it was. Momo said, "Izuku, can I come in? Through the door?" His mouth dropped when his new girlfriend walked in the door. "Sure, I don't see why not," he said. Because she was dressed as a nurse, Izuku could only stare at her as soon as she entered the room. But not an ordinary one. Momo was wearing a white nurse cap and a tight white coat that ended at her waist, emphasizing her hips' voluptuous curve. The top half of her ample natural assets were visible because it was open. He glanced at her long, creamy legs and saw that, except for a pair of red underwear, she was only wearing the coat from the waist down. He realized that her coat was essentially the only clothing she was wearing when he noticed the two nubs protruding from her chest. She walked slowly to his bedside and said, "Izuku." Face flushed, she said, Do you perhaps require a nurse?" Izuku swallowed, lost in the raw sexual allure being pushed at him. Izuku said shrewdly, lost in her appearance, She took a step toward him and sat down at his bedside, adding weight to the infirmary bed. She remarked, "You did so well, Izuku." "Thanks," he uttered, attempting to ascertain her intentions behind this abrupt shift in attitude. "You saved him. You saved him even though not doing so would have given you an easier victory. You saved him even though he was your enemy in this tournament. You saved him even when he was trying to force a marriage with me," she said as his eyes widened. Her smile gave him the impression that his heart would burst at any second. "He told me about the deal that was cancelled just before I changed. And I am so happy that I fell for such a kind, caring person like you." Then Izuku saw her move onto his body, straddling him now with her big, soft ass sitting on his waist. She leaned down to give him a gentle peck on the lips and said, "And for that, I wanted to thank you." He threw his arms around her sides, and her lips met his. As they continued to kiss, his hands resting on her lower back, their lips repeatedly meeting and separating, each one brimming with passion and love for the other. Feeling the firmness of his muscular abs, Izuku began to rub her back with his hands as hers passed beneath the shirt that had been put on him before he was placed there. Izuku wriggled his tongue between her lips after a short while, causing the girl to squeal in surprise as his tongue encircled hers. Momo entwined her hands in Izuku's green hair and caressed it lovingly as they kissed for a while before he felt her begin to grind her lower self against his body. She ground herself over his abs and moved up and down his stomach, groaning a little into their kiss before moving down and barely pausing before she touched his member. Then, as he helped her move, Izuku moved his hands until they were securely on the sides of her meaty thighs, ever so close to her gorgeous ass. They were panting together when Momo broke off the kiss, leaving a trail of saliva in their wake. Her natural beauty was enhanced tenfold for the boxer when she sat up and, with a charmingly shy expression, undid her ponytail, allowing her long raven hair to fall freely. She slowly led his hands to the buttons on her clothing while simultaneously puffing out her chest. He paused for a moment, then reached for the first button, ready to go on. She was now straddling him with her breasts open for Izuku's and Izuku's alone pleasure, so he carefully undid each button one at a time, letting the garment fall off her shoulders. As she spoke again, she took off the sleeves and threw it aside, placing her hands on his shoulders. Izuku sat up as she said, her face burning red, "They're all yours." He lowered his right hand slowly onto her left breast, causing an instant groan as his hand sank into the abundant breast. Captivated, he began to playfully squeeze the girl's chest, swiftly advancing his left hand to do the same with her other breast. That only made her moans louder, and Izuku saw her nipples' two pink nubs gradually harden. Then he had an epiphany, letting go of her right breast to insert his mouth there and sucking on the nub to elicit more groans and mewls of pleasure. She groaned, "Izuku," as his teeth touched her pink skin. As his fingers twisted and caressed the other bud, his tongue went around it, and after a few minutes, he switched to the other bud and did the same. Then Momo began to grind herself right over his member, causing Izuku to groan with pleasure as she did so. Momo felt something start to grow after a few rubs, moving from beneath her to occupy the space between her ass cheeks. Knowing what it was, her face turned a fiery red, and she pulled away from him to lower it. She pulled down Izuku's shorts and his shirt, exposing a tent pitched inside the boxers. She turned to face her boyfriend, who nodded while his face was as red as hers. When he took it off, she saw his proud member in the open. She didn't take the time to examine what exactly went into her after the USJ when they had their spontaneous first encounter, even though she felt it the last time. Wondering how he could conceal such a beast in the shorts he typically wore for combat, she was astounded by the 9-inch pole. She tried wrapping her hand around the fleshy pole, her fingers just barely touching, and moved it up and down once to hear Izuku groan, ignoring those thoughts for the moment. She repeated it because she liked the sound. And once more. As she continued to caress his member, she picked up a steady rhythm once more. Izuku leaned back, enjoying the sensation of her gentle hand caressing him. As she led her lover to heaven, her lover's groans only grew louder as she increased the pace and added a second hand to stroke the top half. Momo began to lift up her waist after deciding that she had waited for too long. She swiftly took a contraceptive pill from her abandoned coat and put it in her mouth, saying, "Izuku, I'm ready." Izuku put his hands on her broad hips, rubbed them tenderly, and gave her a chaste kiss after hearing what she had to say. She led the tip of his member to her door, and he completely encased himself in her in a single motion. Momo. Izuku grunted, lost in the sensation of being inside her close-fitting velvet walls. As Izuku made a single thrust, she squeaked, "I can feel you, Izuku. You're stretching me out on the inside, ah." Izuku continued to thrust after he had gotten used to being in fleshy heaven, until he was pumping in and out of her womb with affectionate vigor. Momo claimed that as soon as he began to move, she could feel the heavens part with her inner walls because Izuku's thrusts caused her previous moans to become louder and more frequent. Momo managed to lift her arms and put them around her boyfriend's neck, bringing him into a kiss as he continued to rut into her, even though she was losing strength due to his pleasure. They kept doing this for 30 minutes before Momo broke off their kiss. She exclaimed, "Izuku. Something's see coming," as he began to move even more quickly inside of her. Izuku opened his eyes and said, "Izuku. Izuku. Aeon." Her abundant breasts were bouncing in time with his movements, beckoning him to lower his head and bite one of her nipples once more. As she arrived, Momo screamed, "Izuku," as the inner walls of her pussy tightened around his own, causing her cum to leak out of her entrance. She leaned onto him after a few seconds, gasping for air. After taking several deep breaths, she became aware of a twitching sensation inside of her. She said, "Why? You're still hard," after realizing it was accurate. After taking a few deep breaths, he pulled himself away from her and said, "Momo, I'm still not done." Holding her big round ass in his hands, he impaled himself into her again and swiftly flipped her onto her stomach. She groaned, "Ah," as his thrusts continued to strike deeper and deeper areas, even reaching the top of her womb, where a small bulge was visible from the outside. As Izuku went plus ultra on her insides, she moaned, tongue-lolling, It's even deeper, so good. More. More." As Izuku was getting close to his breaking point, her eyes also started rolling up. "Here it see comes," he exclaimed, after thrusting into her for what felt like an eternity. She felt him twitch, and then her boyfriend's tidal wave caused her mind to go blank. As he painted her insides white for a minute or so, Izuku's hold tightened around her sides. He then pulled out and collapsed back onto the hospital bed. After getting off her sexual high, the girl lay there for a while, panting and her hold dripping with Izuku's essence. With the last of her strength, Momo crawled up to him and laid her nude body on top of his. As the two soaked up the glow from their recent activity, Momo exhaled sharply, "That was amazing." Izuku replied, "Why yeah. It really was," and then grinned. He kissed the smiling girl's forehead and declared, "I love you." She laid her head on his chest and said, "I love you too." Kato stopped when he noticed the nude couple lying there and exclaimed, "You did a good job there, kid. I enjoyed the irk." Eep. Momo hurriedly covered them with a blanket, blushing in embarrassment, obscuring everything except Izuku's head. In an attempt to minimize the situation, he said, Hey, sensei. How's it going?" Kato answered, pretty good. I'm just gonna talk to you later," he said before leaving, and a moment later, Momo appeared from the freshly created sheet. With Izuku in her grasp, Momo uttered, "That was so embarrassing." Izuku said, "It'll be alright. Anyway, I have to get ready for the final battle, so..." He attempted to sit up, but Momo pushed him back down right away. "No," she exclaimed, her cheeks puffed out in a cute pout. Then, grinning, she nestled into his chest. She said, "Just a few more minutes." As he relished the warmth of their embrace, he said, "Okay then, just a few more." Eventually, the two decided to get dressed and get ready for the festival's last battle after sharing a few more embraces. "The final battle will take place in 5 minutes. Fighters, prepare yourself," Present Mike said, drawing Izuku's attention. He was wearing Yue's tracksuit now, and he was holding Momo's hand as they walked to the prep room. Izuku stretched for a minute after arriving, cracking his knuckles to allow his body to get ready for the last battle. Turning the gloves back into tape, he wrapped his hands in them after giving them a quick inspection. "According to Momo, this is it." Izuku replied, "Yep. I'm fighting Kachan again. Hopefully it goes about as well as last time." She questioned, "Any idea of what he's gonna do?" "Well, knowing him, I can predict what he's gonna do. Start off with a large right swing and try to counter my counter when I neutralize his blast," Izuku replied. Momo remarked, "Hopefully that's what happens." Izuku laughed as she began to fidget in place and said, "By the way, I want to give you another good luck charm. You know, I don't think you'll need one, but I." Izuku smiled and drew Momo close to him for a quick kiss, saying, "I understand. Good luck, right?" "Right," she exclaimed with a smile. Over the intercom, Aizawa instructed both fighters to return to reality by saying, "The final fight will begin in 1 minute, so both fighters, make your way to the stage now." Momo said, "I guess it's time. I'll be cheering you on," and walked away. As he headed to the arena, Izuku slammed his fists together and checked his gloves one last time. Present Mike exclaimed, introducing the first fighter. "He's blasted his way to the top, and won't stop until he's number 1. Give it up for Katsuki Bakugo." As the audience was greeted by the resolute, gritted grin on the blonde boy's face as he entered the arena with his hands ready. And our final combatant enters. He's punched, and punched, and punched, but nothing can break his will. He's gunning for the top, and I'm willing to bet money that he'll make it through this battle too. "Everyone, give it up for Midoriya Izuku," the Present Mike screamed. As Izuku entered, the Izuku stood in his ready stance and raised his fists, energizing the audience. He glanced around at the crowd, then ahead to Bakugo, concentrating only on his opponent. Bakugo's glare grew as Izuku did something that many of them found odd, and he stomped to the ground to silence the crowd. Aizawa could only smile in his own way as Izuku roared and lifted both fists into the air. Aizawa rhetorically questioned, "He's really calling one, huh?" While the audience concentrated on Aizawa's remarks, Present Mike questioned, "Wait, what's the kid doing? I remember being at a junior middleweight match a year or so ago when another boxer did the same," said Aizawa. Present Mike questioned, "That doesn't answer the question. What's he doing?" Aizawa declared, "He's declaring a knockout." With one exception, the arena was stunned by the announcement. A ring out is impossible at this point. Midoriya's not fighting to compete anymore, he's fighting to win. "So what?" exclaimed Bakugo. "I am going to win. I don't care who believes in you, I'll kill you and then kill them too," he yelled. Izuku brought his arms close to his face and lowered them. With anticipation and excitement sparked by the growing tension between the two, he said, "Try it." Present Mike shouted, "Now then. It's the final battle, so give them one they'll never forget. Fight." Bakugo began with a vicious charge in Izuku's direction. "Die!" he screamed, swinging his right arm widely. It approached the boxer, who used his left fist to knock it away while aiming his right at his face. Seeing this, Bakugo attempted to counter with a blast from his left, but Izuku neutralized the move with a low swing that slammed into his gut and a quick jab to the attacking appendage. Gritting his teeth, Bakugo leapt back. "Why the hell aren't you fighting me seriously? Use your quirk so I can prove I'm the strongest," Bakugo screamed. "That's not gonna happen, Kachan. I'm no longer the same Deku from our childhood. I'm stronger now, and while it may be extremely hypocritical of me to say this after fighting Todoroki-kun, I'll show you how much stronger I've become without my quirk," Izuku replied. "Pro boxer or not, I'm gonna make you use your shitty quirk and kick your ass, Deku," he yelled. Izuku leapt up to avoid one explosion and sideways to avoid another. He was evaded and an explosion occurred on his side as the boxer lunged forward into a jolt haymaker. Izuku landed with a skid after being pushed back with a minor burn. Bakugo blasted his back and caused him to stumble as he charged, boosting over his head at the last second. The boxer then spun around, avoiding a blast, evading a second, and pushing aside his palm to parry a third. Bakugo became enraged and began to boost around Izuku in circles, occasionally blasting him as he did so. Finally, he ended the spin with an overhead blast, which Izuku dodged at the last second. After landing, Izuku resisted, bringing his left hand back in anticipation of a clear right. "Deku, I see right through your trap," Bakugo thought as he hurried forward, keeping his left eye. Izuku's eyes widened as he boosted in the direction of the boy and moved as the left hook suddenly materialized. He was hit with a huge explosion as he was on the ground after Bakugo grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the ground behind him. Bakugo slugged Izuku across the face to stun him as he slowly stood up, then blasted himself away to unleash his last blast. Bakugo charged at the boy and yelled, "You're wide open, DIEEE," instead. Howitzer impact. He was on the verge of delivering the final blow with his palm as he charged forward like a spiraling rocket of explosions. Bakugo smiled as it made contact with Izuku's chest. He became aware that his hand was touching air as soon as the sparks appeared and the arena trembled with the explosion. Izuku appeared abruptly to his left, his right fist being jerked back as a smile of his own formed. Fuck. I am powerless to stop it," Bakugo thought as Izuku's right fist swung viciously upwards towards his left side, open because the arm of that side had released the final blast. The smoke from the blast had just cleared. Izuku yelled, "Eat this! Kamigawa! SMASH!" without using one for all as his fist struck Bakugo's side, exerting all of his strength as he delivered the blow. The sound of breaking wood or possibly a shotgun blast caused Bakugo and the arena to freeze. In actuality, Izuku's punch completely destroyed Bakugo's left side of his ribcage, shattering it. Because of the explosive impact's raw strength, he flew away and barreled across the floor to the arena's edge. Medical drones arrived instantly to take him out for treatment after he skidded to a stop just at the arena's edge. Izuku was strong enough to leave his fist mark through the boxing glove, as evidenced by the indent of his fist, which is surrounded by a circle, if one were to look closely. As the audience noticed that blood was streaming from Izuku's now open hand, indicating that Bakugo's rib cage wasn't the only thing that had broken, he stood there and turned off his right glove. The crowd's roars rocked the arena as the boxer went on, lifting his other hand into the air with his wrapped fist. I can't believe it, in one powerful blow, Izuku Midoriya has taken the top spot of the sports festival, the presenter shouted. As the crowd dispersed, Aizawa declared, "Congratulations for Midoriya Izuku of Class 1A. After a final 30-minute preparation period we will begin the closing ceremony." Izuku was then brought to Recovery Girl once more. Eventually, Izuku awoke with a sting in his right hand and a numb sensation throughout his body. As he examined it, he noticed a scar that ran across the back and ended just in front of the palm. He questioned, "What happened? You broke your hand punching your opponent. I had to operate on your hand to make sure it healed properly, but don't overuse one for all like that again," she stated. As Izuku said, "But I wasn't using one for all in that punch," Recovery Girl froze. "Wait, what?" Recovery Girl asked, looking twice at what he had said and demanding an explanation right away. "So you're telling me you punched a boy hard enough to break your own hand, without using your quirk?" she inquired. And Izuku said, "Yep. You punched him hard enough to almost completely pulverize 3 ribs, and leave an indent of both your fist and glove deep enough that it reached his lungs, and you didn't use one for all at all?" She was almost yelling. Aware of Kachan's condition, Izuku said, Yes? Is Kachan okay?" "He'll be fine, much like your hand, however, you'll be left with that scar in your hand, just like how he'll be left with that impact marking since it was too deep to fully heal. Use it as a reminder to not punch so hard." "Yeah," said the Recovery Girl. She leapt from her stool and turned back to face him before tidying up the room. "That Bakugo boy was healed first, so he's already at the arena for the ending ceremony. You should make your way there too." He blushed deeply as she said, "Also if you have sex in here again I'm making you and that Yayorozu girl clean the infirmary for a week, got that?" Izuku said, "Why yeah, I got it," she said, "Good. Now get out," and he did as she said, heading back to the arena. As he recalled the words of encouragement his mother had given him prior to the incident, he noticed Todoroki standing at the podium for 3rd place, the faintest trace of a smile on his normally stoic face. Kachan came in at number 2, chained to a pole with a muzzle over his mouth, his savage cries muffled to some extent. As the audience's roars echoed in the background, he jogged up to take his place on the section that was empty at number 1. A boom silenced the crowd as Midnight yelled, "Now, granting out winners their rewards for their hard work, is the symbol of peace himself, All Might. With a microphone attached to his Silver Age costume and a box in his hands, All Might screamed, "I am here," before descending from the sky to land in front of the three. He gave Todoroki a medal first and then exclaimed, "You three did amazingly in the festival." Placing a medal around his neck, he said, "Young Todoroki, you were able to go beyond and dominate early on. If you practice using both sides of your quirk, I'm sure you will become a great hero." As the number one hero proceeded to the next, Todoroki said, "Thank you, All Might." He attempted to put the medal around his neck, but the blonde boy persisted in moving, so All Might simply put it around his muzzle. "Young Bakugo, you participated with great ferocity and competitiveness. I would say that you are on the way to being a powerful hero in the future." The boxer could swear his signature smile got slightly bigger as he finally moved on to Izuku. "Young Midoriya, you took the festival by storm, and absolutely demolished the competition during the battle tournament. I believe that if you keep training, keep fighting for your beliefs, and continue to have that heroic attitude, you can surely become one of the greatest heroes. Once again, congratulations young Midoriya," All Might said as he wrapped the medal around his neck. Present Might, All Might, and Midnight gave a final message before the sports festival came to an end.
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, bye bye.